sound of a gentle, dry wind blowing. Hello, and welcome. Today, we journey into the heart of a mystery, a place where the sun burns with an ancient fire and the very rocks seem to hold their breath. We're headed to the Superstition Mountains of Arizona, a landscape carved by time, wind, and legend. Imagine, if you will, standing on the edge of this vast wilderness. The sun, a molten orb of gold, begins its slow descent, kissing the horizon goodnight. The light it casts is otherworldly, painting the rugged peaks in hues of amber, rose, and deep purple. Every cactus, every craggy outcrop, throws a long, distorted shadow that stretches like an inky finger across the desert floor. In these moments, the world falls silent. The frantic energy of the day dissolves into a profound stillness, broken only by the whisper of the wind as it snakes through canyons and caresses the sun-baked earth. This is the magic hour in the Superstitions, a time when the boundary between the real and the imagined seems to blur. It's in this quiet, almost sacred atmosphere that the first murmurs of an incredible story begin to stir. It's a tale as old as the mountains themselves, carried on that same desert wind. A whisper of gold, not just any gold, but a fortune beyond imagination. A mother lode tucked away, hidden from sight. They call it the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. The legend says that somewhere, buried deep within these labyrinthine canyons and treacherous peaks, lies a vein of gold so rich it could make kings of common men. For generations, this whisper has been a Cyrus call, luring prospectors, adventurers, and dreamers into its embrace. It's a story whispered around campfires, debated in dusty saloons, and passed down from father to son. Some say it's a fable, a tall tale spun to entertain tourists. Others, with a knowing glint in their eye, will tell you that the gold is real, protected by something more than just rock and heat. They speak of ancient curses, ghostly guardians, and the spirits of those who sought the mine and never returned. The name itself, Superstition Mountains, feels like a warning. It's a place that commands respect, even a little bit of fear. As you gaze upon its formidable silhouette against the twilight sky, you can't help but feel a sense of awe. These aren't just mountains. They are a fortress of stone, a keeper of secrets. The air is thick with history, with the echoes of Apache warriors, Spanish conquistadors, and grizzled prospectors who all walked this land, each with their own hopes and fears. The story of the Lost Dutchman is not a simple treasure map with an X marking the spot. It's a puzzle, a complex web of clues, hearsay, and deathbed confessions. Its central figure is a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz, the Dutchman himself. Did he truly stumble upon this incredible source of wealth? Or was he just a master storyteller, a charlatan who spun a legend out of thin air? The evidence is tantalizingly ambiguous. He would appear in the nearby town of Phoenix from time to time, his saddlebags heavy with high-grade gold or enough to fuel the feverish speculation. But he took the secret of its location to his grave, leaving behind a legacy of obsession and mystery. Those who have tried to follow in his footsteps have faced a formidable adversary. The desert itself. The superstitions are unforgiving. The summer heat is a physical force, capable of draining the life from an unprepared hiker in a matter of hours. Water is scarce, a precious commodity more valuable than gold. The terrain is a maze of sheer cliffs, blind canyons, and thorny vegetation. It's a landscape that can disorient and deceive even the most experienced outdoorsman. Rattlesnakes lie in wait under cool rocks, and mountain lions patrol the high ridges. Getting lost here is not a minor inconvenience. It can be a fatal mistake, and yet, people keep coming. The allure of the gold is powerful, but there's something more to it. It's the challenge, the call of the unknown. It's the desire to solve a mystery that has endured for over a century. Standing era, as the last sliver of sun disappears and the first stars begin to prick the velvety blackness of the sky, you feel the pull of that timelessness. The world of smartphones and deadlines fades away, replaced by something more primal, more essential. You start to wonder, could it be true? Could a fortune in gold really be hidden just a few miles from a major modern city? The landscape holds its secrets close. Every canyon could be the one. Every shadow could be concealing the entrance. The silence of the desert isn't empty. It's filled with unanswered questions. It's a silence that invites you to listen closer, to hear that faint, persistent whisper of gold on the wind. This is where our story begins. It's not just a tale of treasure hunting. It's a story about human nature, our dreams, our greed, our courage, and our obsession with the unknown. It's a journey into a place where history and legend are one and the same. We are about to step into the shadows of the Superstition Mountains, to follow the faint trail of whispers left behind by Jacob Waltz, and the countless others who dared to chase the golden glimmer in the desert dust. The mystery is deep, the landscape is vast, and the legend is waiting. Thank you for joining me on this first step of our journey. If you're as captivated by this mystery as I am, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We have a long and fascinating trail to follow. See you next time. Welcome back, everyone, to our journey into the heart of one of America's greatest mysteries. In our last chapter, we set the stage for the legend of the lost Dutchman's gold mine. Today, we venture into the land where this legend was born, a place as deadly as it is beautiful. This is Chapter 2. The harsh beauty of the Superstition Mountains. Picture this: a jagged silhouette of rock tearing into a vast, azure sky. The Superstition Mountains, located just east of Phoenix, Arizona, aren't your typical rolling green hills. This is a land of extremes. The landscape is a maze of sun-baked canyons, towering spires of volcanic rock called hoodoos, and treacherous, razor-sharp bridges. It's a geological masterpiece, sculpted over millions of years by fire and erosion. The colors alone are mesmerizing: deep reds, burnt oranges, and dusty ochres that shift and change with the sun's journey across the sky. But don't let this visual splendor fool you. Beauty here wears a thorny crown. The superstitions are a survivalist's ultimate test. The sun beats down with an unforgiving intensity, with summer temperatures often soaring well above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There's little shade to be found among the sparse vegetation of saguaro cacti, prickly pear, and water is the most precious treasure of all, often hidden away in seasonal springs that are unreliable at best. One wrong turn, one miscalculation of your water supply, and the desert shows its true, unforgiving nature. The heat isn't the only danger. This is prime rattlesnake country. Western diamondbacks, Mojave rattlers. They blend perfectly with the rocky terrain, coiled and waiting in the shade of a boulder. One careless step can have fatal consequences. And then there are the cliffs. Sheer, vertical drops that can appear out of nowhere, especially in the confusing labyrinth of canyons. A slip, a loose rock, and the story ends abruptly. The mountains are indifferent. They claim the careless and the unlucky with cold impartiality. It's a place that demands respect, a place that has humbled even the most experienced outdoorsman. Long before the first prospectors ever dreamed of gold, this land was sacred. For centuries, these mountains were the heartland of indigenous peoples, most notably the Apache and the Pima. They understood this landscape not as something to be conquered, but as a living, breathing entity deserving of reverence. To the Apache, these peaks were a place of spiritual power, a portal to the gods. They called them Ga-En, a place of mountain spirits. Their legends are woven into the very fabric of these canyons. One powerful story tells of the thunder god, who resides within the mountains. It is said that he jealously guards the sacred ground and will unleash his fury upon any who dare to defile it. These weren't just spooky stories told around a campfire. They were deeply held beliefs, cautionary tales born from a profound respect for the land's power. The Pima people also had their own traditions, viewing the mountains as a place of refuge, but also of great danger, a boundary between the world of the living and the world of spirits. They warned that those who ventured too deep, driven by greed, would be swallowed by the mountain, never to return. These legends were a map, not of gold, but of survival and respect. They were a clear warning. This land is not for the taking. But as the tide of westward expansion swept across America in the 19th century, a new kind of person arrived. These were the pioneers, the ranchers, the early settlers. They were a tough, pragmatic bunch, carving out a life in a harsh new world. When they first encountered the local indigenous tribes, they heard the stories. They listened to the warnings about the thunder god and the sacred ground. But to many of these newcomers, steeped in a culture of manifest destiny. These tales were dismissed as mere folklore, the superstitions of a primitive people. They saw mountains, not as sacred portals, but as obstacles to be crossed or resources to be exploited. They saw the Apache not as protectors of a holy land, but as hostile adversaries. The settlers' focus was on building ranches, finding grazing land for their cattle, and establishing a foothold in this wild territory. The mountains were a dramatic backdrop to their daily struggles, but the spiritual warnings of the Apache fell on deaf ears. For a time, the settlers' dismissal of these legends held. They grazed their cattle in the foothills and kept a wary distance from the deeper, more treacherous parts of the range. The mountains were respected for their physical dangers, but the spiritual ones were ignored. But then, something changed. A whisper started, a rumor that grew into a fever. It was a word that had driven people to madness, to cross oceans, and to abandon everything they knew. That word was gold. Slowly but surely, tales began to circulate of rich veins of yellow or hidden deep within those forbidden canyons. At first, it was just talk, campfire gossip. But as more and more prospectors trickled into the territory, the stories became more concrete, more tantalizing. The allure of gold is a powerful force. It can make a person deaf to warnings, blind to danger, and dismissive of even the most deeply held beliefs. The sacred lands of the Apache, the home of the thunder god, were about to become the epicenter of a frantic, desperate search. The old legends were about to be put to the test as the greed of the white man grew too strong to be contained by cautionary tales. The stage was set for a clash of worlds, a conflict between ancient reverence and modern greed, all centered on the unforgiving heart of the Superstition Mountains. And that is where our next chapter begins. The stories of the early prospectors who dared to defy the legends, and the first confirmed discovery of gold that would ignite a firestorm of obsession, leading directly to the man who would give the legend its name. Jacob Waltz, the Dutchman. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the journey. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of history's greatest treasure hunts, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single chapter of this incredible story. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the heart of one of America's greatest legends. In our last chapter, we set the stage with the Peralta family and their fabled mine. Today, we turn the page to Chapter 3, where we meet the man whose name is forever synonymous with this tale of gold and mystery. Jacob Waltz, the enigmatic Dutchman. So, who was this figure at the center of the storm? Jacob Waltz wasn't a character from a tall tale. He was a real person. Born in Germany around 1810, he immigrated to the United States, like so many others, seeking fortune and a new life. He arrived in America in the 1840s and made his way west, drawn by the siren song of gold. He was a prospector, a man who read the land, sifted the streams, and chipped away at rocks, always hoping for that telltale glint of yellow. Now, you might be scratching your head. If he was German, why was he called the Dutchman? This is a classic case of a linguistic mix-up from the 19th century. Back then, the word for Jerem Deutsch was often misheard or anglicized by English speakers as Dutch. It was a common shorthand, and so Jacob Waltz from Germany became known throughout the Arizona territory simply as the Dutchman. It's a small detail, but it adds a layer of historical flavor to his identity, a nickname that would outlive the man himself and become the very name of the legend. By the 1860s, Waltz had settled in the burgeoning Salt River Valley, near the dusty sun-baked settlement that would one day become Phoenix. He wasn't a flamboyant character, far from it. Those who knew him described him as quiet, even reclusive. He kept to himself, living a simple life on a small homestead. He farmed a little, raised some chickens, and lived the life of a typical pioneer settler. But there was something different about Waltz. He had a reputation for secrecy, a man who played his cards very close to his chest. And then the rumor started. Whispers would circulate through the saloons and general stores of Phoenix. Every now and then, Jacob Waltz would come into town to buy supplies. But unlike many of his struggling neighbors, he always seemed to have money. And not just a little bit of money. He would pay for his goods with what appeared to be incredibly rich, high-grade gold. Or where was this quiet, unassuming homesteader getting such pristine gold? When asked, Waltz would just grunt, or change the subject, or offer a vague, dismissive answer. His secrecy only fueled the speculation. He wasn't flaunting his wealth, but his sudden, unexplained access to it made him an object of intense curiosity and suspicion. This is where the threads of our story begin to weave together. How did this solitary German prospector become linked to a legendary Spanish mine? The details are murky, lost to the sands of time and embellished by a century of storytelling. But the connection begins here, in these moments. Waltz, with his pockets full of rich ore and his lips sealed tight, was seen as a man who held a profound secret. He would disappear into the rugged, foreboding Superstition Mountains for weeks at a time, always alone. These were the same mountains whispered to be the home of the Peralta's lost treasure. Was he just a lucky prospector who stumbled upon a rich vein of his own? Or had he found something much, much bigger? Had he, through some twist of fate, rediscovered the long-lost mine of the Peraltas? The locals certainly thought so. They watched him, they talked about him, and they dreamed of the fortune he was supposedly hiding. His trips into the mountains, his mysterious gold, and his tight-lipped nature all combined to create the perfect storm of intrigue. The Enigma of Jacob Waltz was born, and his quiet life was about to become the foundation for a legend that would captivate treasure hunters for generations to come. The town buzzed with theories. Some said he'd saved a member of the Peralta family, who gave him a map out of gratitude. Others claimed he'd followed a trail of clues left behind decades earlier. A more violent version of the story suggests he might have ambushed the last Peralta expedition and taken the secret of the mine for himself. We can't know for sure which, if any, of these tales are true. What we do know is that Jacob Waltz held the key, whether real or imagined, to a treasure of immense proportions. He was no longer just a prospector. He was the keeper of a dream. He guarded his secret jealously. Men tried to follow him into the mountains, but Waltz was a master of the wilderness. He could lose a tail in the labyrinthine canyons and jagged peaks with an almost supernatural skill. He seemed to know every trail, every rock, and every hiding place. This only added to his mystique. Was he just a skilled frontiersman, or was there something else at play? Some whispered that the mountains themselves protected him, that the spirits of the Apaches who held the range sacred were his allies. The more he concealed his secret, the more the legend grew, and the more desperate others became to uncover it. The gold he brought back was unlike anything typically found in the region. It was said to be almost pure, rose gold. Some called it due to its unique reddish tint. Geologists and experienced miners who saw it were baffled. It didn't match the ore from any known mine or district in Arizona. This unique quality became a crucial piece of the puzzle, a physical testament to the fact that Waltz's source was unique, hidden, and incredibly valuable. It was tangible proof that something extraordinary was hidden deep within the superstitions. For nearly 2 decades, Waltz lived this double life. To the world, he was a humble farmer on the edge of Phoenix, but in secret he was the sole proprietor of a treasure that others would kill for. He navigated this dangerous line with caution and cunning. He trusted no one fully and kept the location of his mine locked away in the one place no one could break into. His own mind. He was a living, breathing mystery, walking the streets of a town that was obsessed with him, yet knew nothing about him. This period of his life sets the stage for the dramatic final act. Waltz was getting older, and the harsh life of a prospector was taking its toll. What happens when a man who has held the world's greatest secret for a lifetime feels his own time running out? Does he take the secret to his grave, letting it be reclaimed by the mountains forever? Or does he, in a final moment of trust or desperation, pass it on? That is the question that hangs in the air as we watch the old Dutchman live out his days, the weight of a mountain of gold resting squarely on his shoulders. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine isn't just about gold. It's about the man who held its secret. It's about Jacob Waltz. Join us in the next chapter as we explore the final days of Jacob Waltz, the great Phoenix flood that changed everything, and the deathbed confession that would ignite a treasure hunt that continues to this very day. The most crucial clues are about to be revealed. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss what happens next. We'll see you in the next chapter, imagined amid to late 1800s. The air across the American Southwest crackles with a frenetic energy, a fever that has gripped the nation. It wasn't an illness, but a dream, the dream of gold. This was the era of the great gold rushes, a time when a single rumor could spark a stampede, depopulating towns and creating new ones overnight in the harshest of landscapes. And nowhere was this fever more intense, more desperate, than in the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the Arizona Territory. The Civil War had ended, and a nation was looking to rebuild, to find new fortunes and new futures. Stories, whispered at first, then shouted from headlines, told of shimmering veins of gold and silver hidden in the remote mountains and dry washes of Arizona. These weren't just tales of wealth. They were tales of transformation. A poor farmer could become a king, a disillusioned soldier could find a new purpose, and a common laborer could build an empire, all with the swing of a pickaxe and a little bit of luck. So they came. They came in a relentless, dusty flood, from the green fields of the East, the muddy riverbanks of the Midwest, and the bustling ports of the West Coast. They were farmers who had left their plows to rust, shopkeepers who had shuttered their businesses, lawyers who had traded their briefcases for bedrolls, and veterans who sought peace and prosperity in the earth. They arrived on horseback, in rickety wagons piled high with their worldly possessions, or simply on foot, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and trepidation. These prospectors were a motley crew, a true cross-section of a society in flux. There were seasoned Mexican miners, the Asterix Gambesinos Asteris, whose knowledge of the desert and its secrets was unparalleled. There were grizzled sourdoughs from the California and Colorado rushes, their skin like tanned leather, their eyes always scanning the horizon. And then there were the greenhorns, the newcomers, their hands soft, their optimism dangerously high, often completely unprepared for the brutal realities of the desert. They poured into places that were barely dots on a map, places like Wickenburg, Prescott, and Tombstone. These settlements exploded from dusty camps into chaotic boom towns almost overnight. Tents and crude shacks lined muddy streets, the air thick with the smell of campfire smoke, cheap whiskey, and unwashed bodies. The soundtrack of these towns was a constant cacophony. The clang of blacksmith hammers, the braying of stubborn mules, the boisterous laughter and angry shouts spilling from saloons. And always the relentless rhythmic asterisk, thump 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 asterisk of the stamp mills crushing, or the heartbeat of the gold fever itself. Life for the prospector was a relentless cycle of back-breaking labor and fleeting hope. They would spend weeks, even months, in desolate canyons, their only companions, the vultures circling overhead and the ghosts of those who had failed before them. Days were spent under a merciless sun, swinging a pickaxe into unforgiving rock, their muscles screaming in protest. They'd pan for gold in near-dry creek beds, swirling grit and water for hours, their eyes straining to catch that elusive glint of color. A few tiny flakes, no bigger than a grain of sand, could be enough to keep a man going for another week, fueling his obsession. This obsession was the very essence of gold fever. It was a powerful, consuming force that could warp a person's reality. It made men endure scorching heat, freezing nights, the constant threat of dehydration, and the knowing loneliness of the wilderness. It pushed them to take incredible risks, venturing into territories where danger lurked behind every rock and cactus. They weren't just searching for wealth. They were chasing a mirage, a promise that the next swing of the pick, the next pan of dirt, would be the one that changed everything. And for a very, very small few, it did. A lucky prospector might stumble upon a rich vein, a bonanza, and become fantastically wealthy overnight. Stories of these successes, amplified with each telling, were the fuel that kept the fever burning in thousands of others. Men would hear of someone pulling a nugget the size of a fist from a dry wash and think, that could be me. That asterisk will, asterisk be me. This hope was a potent drug, more addictive than any saloon whiskey. It blinded them to the overwhelming odds stacked against them. But for every story of a bonanza, there were 1,000 stories of heartbreak. The vast majority of prospectors found little more than sore backs and shattered dreams. They chased rumors that turned out to be false, invested their last dollar in claims that yielded nothing, and watched as their supplies, their health, and their hope dwindled away. The desert was littered with abandoned claims, marked by a rusty pickaxe and a shallow grave. Heartbreak was the rule, not the exception. The same obsession that drove them to hope also led them to ruin. Men lost everything, their savings, their families, left behind, their sanity. The isolation and repeated failure could break even the strongest spirit. The line between determined prospector and crazed hermit was perilously thin. They'd talk to themselves, guard worthless holes in the ground with a paranoid fury, and see shimmering gold in every piece of glittering mica, a phenomenon aptly named fool's gold. The fever, when it didn't lead to riches, often led to a slow, lonely descent into despair. So, as we look back on this chapter of Arizona's history, we see that the gold fever was more than just a rush for wealth. It was a profound human drama played out on a vast and unforgiving stage. It was a story of incredible hope and crushing heartbreak, of unwavering determination and all-consuming obsession. It forged the character of the Arizona Territory, leaving a legacy of ghost towns, lost mines, and legendary tales that still echo through the canyons today. It was a time when ordinary men gambled everything on a dream as bright and alluring as the desert sun, and just as capable of burning those who chased it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this story, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the wild and fascinating history of the American West. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome, bike, history buffs, and treasure hunters, to our journey into the heart of one of America's greatest legends. We've traced the life of Jacob Waltz, the man who would become the Dutchman, from his German roots to the rough-and-tumble world of American prospecting. But now, we arrive at the core of the mystery, the very chapter that forged his legend, Waltz's secretive expeditions. Imagine the scene: a quiet, unassuming man living on the fringes of society, suddenly disappearing without a word. Not for a day or two, but for weeks, sometimes even a month at a time. Jacob Waltz would simply vanish, melting into the formidable and unforgiving Superstition Mountains that loomed over the Arizona Territory. To his neighbors and the few acquaintances he had, it was a peculiar habit. Where did he go? What could possibly keep a man in that dangerous wilderness for so long? The questions hung in the dusty desert air, but answers were nowhere to be found. Waltz was a man who kept his own counsel, his weathered face a mask that betrayed nothing. Then, just as mysteriously as he had left, he would reappear. He'd trudge back into town, not with a fanfare or a grand announcement, but quietly, often under the cover of dusk. He'd be leaner, more weathered, his clothes tattered from the harsh terrain. But it wasn't his haggard appearance that caught people's attention. It was what he carried. Tucked away in his saddlebags, he would have small but heavy pouches filled with gold ore. And this wasn't just any ore. It was incredibly, unusually rich. Veterans of the gold rush, men who had seen it all, would look at Waltz's haul with wide-eyed disbelief. The gold was so pure, so concentrated, it looked like it had been hand-picked from the veins of the earth. In a region where finding even a trace of color was a victory, Waltz was returning with treasure that defied all logic and experience. Naturally, this sparked a wildfire of curiosity and suspicion. The local saloons buzzed with talk of the Dutchman. How was he doing it? Where was he finding this motherlode? Prospectors, driven by a mix of envy and admiration, would try to pry the secret from him. They'd offer him drinks, try to befriend him, even attempts to follow him. But Waltz was like a ghost. He rebuffed all questions with a stern silence or a dismissive wave of his hand. His eyes, they said, held a warning. He was a man who valued his solitude and his secrets above all else. Any attempt to trail him into the mountains proved futile. He knew the labyrinthine canyons and treacherous ridges like the back of his hand, and he would lose any pursuer with ease, leaving them frustrated and lost in the wilderness he called his own. This secrecy, this impenetrable wall he built around his discovery, became the very foundation of the legend. People began to fill the void of the unknown with their own theories, each more fantastical than the last. The narrative of the lost Dutchman's mind began to take shape, woven from threads of fact and fiction. Was Waltz simply lucky? Had he stumbled upon a lost Spanish mine, a forgotten treasure trove left behind by the Peralta family centuries ago? This was a popular theory, one that connected his discovery to the rich folklore of the region. It painted Waltz not as a brilliant prospector, but as a fortunate rediscoverer A man who found a map or followed an ancient clue to a pre-existing fortune. Or perhaps it was something more. Some whispered that Waltz was an exceptionally skilled geologist, a master of his craft who could read the secrets of the rocks in a way no one else could. In this version of the story, his mine wasn't found by luck, but through sheer expertise and relentless determination. He hadn't rediscovered the lost mine. He had found his own asterisk mine, a virgin deposit of unimaginable wealth that had been waiting for someone with his unique knowledge to uncover it. This theory gave him a kind of genius status, elevating him from a simple prospector to a geological savant. It explained the purity of the ore. He knew exactly where to look, targeting only the richest veins. But then, there were the darker, more supernatural whispers that echoed in the shadows of the superstitions. The mountains themselves were a place of legend, sacred to the Apache people who considered them haunted ground. Stories circulated of strange lights in the sky, of eerie sounds echoing through the canyons, and of prospectors who went into the mountains and never came out. Some began to believe that Waltz's mine wasn't of this world, or that it was protected by ancient spirits. Had Waltz made a pact? Was he being guided by a supernatural force? This idea, though far-fetched, added a layer of mystique and danger to the legend. It transformed the story from a simple treasure hunt into a tale of cosmic significance, a battle against forces beyond human understanding. Waltz wasn't just a miner. He was a custodian of a forbidden secret, a man who had trespassed into a spiritual realm and was now bound to its power. These three pillars, luck, skill, and the supernatural, formed the enduring myth of the lost Dutchman's mine. Jacob Waltz, through his actions, or rather his lack of explanation for them, became the central character in a story that was bigger than himself. He wasn't just a man who found gold. He was the keeper of a dream, an enigma that represented the ultimate frontier fantasy. His regular disappearances and his stunningly rich were the facts, but the story that grew around them was a testament to the human imagination and our eternal fascination with the unknown. He said nothing, and in his silence, everyone else created a legend. Each time he returned from the mountains, laden with his impossible treasure, he added another layer to his own myth. He was a living paradoxa. Poor recluse who possessed access to immense wealth. He lived a modest life, never flaunting his gold, using just enough to get by before the call of the mountains lured him back. This behavior only deepened the mystery. Why find so much gold only to live so humbly? It was as if the journey, the secret itself, was more valuable to him than the wealth it produced. This quiet, stubborn man from Germany had, perhaps unintentionally, become the architect of America's most famous lost mine legend. His secretive expeditions were not just trips to find gold. They were the very acts that chiseled his name into the annals of history and folklore. And so, the stage was set. The man, the mountain, and the gold were all in place. But the story is far from over. The legend was about to take a dramatic turn, as Waltz's closely guarded secret would eventually be passed on, leading to a century of obsession, tragedy, and relentless searching. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of the Lost Dutchman's saga. If you're captivated by this mystery, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we explore the final days of Jacob Waltz and the clues he left behind. We'll see you next time. Hello and welcome back to our deep dive into the legendary Lost Dutchman's gold mine. In our previous chapters, we've explored the life of Jacob Waltz, the curse of the Superstition Mountains, and the stories of those who dared to seek the treasure. Today, in Chapter 6, we re-zeroing in on one of the most tantalizing pieces of the entire puzzle, the mysterious map. Did Jacob Waltz, the enigmatic prospector at the heart of this legend, ever actually draw a map? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The story goes that on his deathbed, Waltz didn't just whisper clues. He might have sketched something out. Some say it was a rough drawing on a piece of buckskin. Others claim it was a scrap of paper. Imagine Julia Thomas, by his bedside, trying to make sense of these final, cryptic lines and symbols. A guide to a fortune that would forever change her life. But if a map existed, where did it go? Did Julia possess it? Did she lose it? Or did it even exist in the first place? This is where the story splinters into a dozen fascinating paths. Over the decades, countless versions of the Dutchman's map Abasudfa said. It's like a historical game of telephone. We hear tales of maps found tucked away in the false bottom of an old trunk, discovered pressed between the pages of a forgotten diary, or even bought for a few dollars at a dusty antique shop. Each one claims to be the authentic key, the one true guide. They feature different landmarks, different paths, and different clues. Some are incredibly detailed, showing canyons and rock formations with uncanny precision. Others are so crude and symbolic they look more like a child-esque drawing than a prospector-esque guide. So, how do we tell the real from the fake? The truth is, we probably can't. Most historians believe that nearly all of these maps are later creations, forgeries crafted by hopefuls or hoaxers, looking to cash in on the legend. Think about it. If you had the real map, would you be selling copies? But the allure is powerful. Each map tells a story, not just of the mine, but of the person who created it and the dream they were chasing. They represent tangible pieces of hope, physical manifestations of a legend that refuses to die. One of the most famous is the Peralta stone map. These aren't paper maps, but large, heavy stone tablets covered in carvings. Discovered in the 1940s near the Superstition Mountains, they depict a network of trails, a priest, a horse, and a heart-shaped symbol, all supposedly pointing to 18 different mine locations. The carvings are intricate and seem to tell a story of the Peralta family, the supposed original owners of the mine. For many, these stones are undeniable proof. The detail, the sheer effort it would have taken to carve them all screams authenticity. Skeptics, however, point to inconsistencies in the Spanish grammar and the style of the carvings, suggesting they are a clever, modern hoax. But genuine or not, the Peralta stones have become a central part of the Dutchman lore, guiding treasure hunters for generations. Then we have the purely symbolic clues. The legend is filled with whispers of secret symbols carved directly onto the landscape itself. Treasure hunters have spent years searching for a face on the rock, a hanging judge, or a horsehead peak. These aren't just natural formations. The belief is that Waltz, or perhaps the Peraltas before him, chiseled signs into the very stones of the Superstition Mountains. A triangle of rocks pointing in a specific direction. An arrow carved into a cactus. A cross hidden in the shadow of a canyon wall at a specific time of day. This idea transforms the entire mountain range into a giant, open-air map. Every shadow, every rock, every peculiar plant could be a clue. It's an intoxicating concept, turning a simple hike into an epic quest. You can imagine prospectors in the 1920s and 30s, armed with nothing but a rumor and a keen eye, scrutinizing every inch of the desert, convinced they were just one symbol away from uncovering the motherlode. They weren't just looking for a mine. They were trying to read the secret language of the mountains themselves. Were these symbols ever really there? Or is it a classic case of pareidolia, where the human brain sees patterns and faces in random formations, especially when it desperately wants to? This brings us to how the very idea of the Dutchman-esque map became a legend in its own right. It wasn't just about a single piece of paper. It was about the asterisk concept. Asterisk of a map. Newspapers and magazines in the early 20th century sensationalized the story, often publishing speculative maps that were more fantasy than fact. These publications fueled the public's imagination. Suddenly, everyone had a theory. Everyone had a lead. The map became a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of the enduring American dream of striking it rich through grit and a little bit of luck. The legend of the map also provided a convenient narrative. When treasure hunters failed, as they almost always did, they could blame it on having the wrong map or on misinterpreting a crucial clue. The mine was still out there. Their guide was just flawed. This kept the hope alive, ensuring that a new generation would pick up the quest where the last one left off. The map, real or imagined, acted as the engine of the legend, keeping it running decade after decade. It's a key ingredient. Without the promise of a map, the lost Dutchman's mine might have faded into just another forgotten prospector's tale. Instead, it became an enduring mystery, a puzzle begging to be solved. Let's look at a few specific examples that have captured the public's imagination. There's the Bark Townsend map, supposedly drawn from the memory of a man who claimed to have been shown the mine as a boy. It features landmarks like Two Finger Rock and the Witch's Needle. Then there's the Weaver's Needle map, which uses the famous towering landmark as its central point of reference, with lines and angles supposedly triangulating the mine's location from its peak. Each map has its own following, its own set of believers who have dedicated years, sometimes their entire lives, to deciphering its secrets. They form communities, share research, and argue passionately about the true meaning of a squiggle or a dot. But what if the most important map wasn't on paper or stone at all? What if it was a mental map? A series of visual cues stored only in Jacob Waltz's memory. Think about it. An old, experienced prospector like Waltz would know the dangers of a physical map. It could be stolen, lost, or fall into the wrong hands. The safest place to keep a secret of that magnitude would be in his head. He told Julia Thomas to look for a peak with a sharp spire, to find the Kabe, and to follow the direction of the sun's shadow at a certain time of day. These are verbal directions, not lines on a page. From I mean, you can see the military trail, but from the military trail, you cannot see my mine. This is a brilliant piece of navigational information, but it's useless without being on the ground. Perhaps Waltz's map was a story, a set of instructions that only made sense when you were physically standing in the right spot, seeing the world through his eyes. This theory is compelling because it explains why no definitive map has ever been found. It never existed in a physical form. The clues were a sequence of observations, a mental checklist. This also explains why Julia Thomas and her partners were ultimately unsuccessful. They had the words, but they lacked Waltz's intimate, first-hand knowledge of the terrain. They couldn't see the landscape the way he did. They were trying to read a book with half the pages missing. So, as we wrap up our exploration of the mysterious map, we're left with more questions than answers, which is the hallmark of any great legend. Was there a single, authentic map drawn by Jacob Waltz, or are the hundreds of maps that have surfaced over the years just echoes of a rumor, born from hope and speculation? Are the Peralta stones a genuine artifact from a bygone era, or a masterful piece of modern folklore? And what about the symbols in the mountains? Are they real signposts, or just tricks of light and shadow on the rock? Perhaps the true treasure isn't the gold itself, but the map, or rather, the quest for it. The map represents the puzzle, the intellectual challenge, the adventure. It's what separates the lost Dutchman's mine from any other tale of lost treasure. It's not just about digging, it's about deciphering. It's a mystery that invites us all to be detectives, to pore over clues, and to dream of being the one to finally solve it. The legend of the map ensures that even if the gold is never found, the hunt will go on forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of our journey. The story is far from over. In our next episode, we'll delve into the lives of the Dutch hunters, the obsessed and often tragic figures who have dedicated their lives to this search. You won't want to miss it. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single clue. See you next time. Hello and welcome back to our deep dive into the legend of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. In our journey so far, we've navigated through a maze of myths, maps, and mysterious figures. But today, we're focusing on the one person who might have held the real key, the one who was there at the very end. We're talking about Julia Thomas, the woman who cradled the secrets of Jacob Waltz as he took his final breath. This isn't just a story about a map or a location. It's a deeply human drama of trust, desperation, and a promise whispered in the final moments of a man's life. So, who was Julia Thomas? She wasn't a hardened prospector or a treasure hunter. She was a Phoenix local, an ice cream parlor owner who, through a twist of fate, became the caregiver and confidant to an ailing Jacob Waltz in 1891. BT's time, Waltz was an old man, his body failing after a lifetime of prospecting in the harsh Arizona landscape. He was living in a small adobe shack on the banks of the Salt River, and as his health declined, it was Julia and her friend, Renav Petrash, who took him in and cared for him. Imagine the scene. Phoenix, 1891. Not the bustling metropolis we know today, but a dusty, growing town on the edge of a vast, unforgiving wilderness. The Superstition Mountains loomed on the horizon, already shrouded in tales of lost treasure and ghostly guardians. Inside a modest home, an old man, the Dutchman, lies dying. He's weathered, secretive, and rumored to be sitting on the richest gold discovery in American history. For weeks, maybe months, Julia cared for him. She brought him food, tended to his needs, and likely listened to his ramblings, the fragmented memories of a long and difficult life. It's in these final, feverish hours that the core of our story unfolds. Legend has it that as Jacob Waltz felt his life slipping away, a sense of gratitude, or perhaps a desire for his legacy to live on, compelled him to finally break his lifelong silence. The air would have been thick with the smell of dust and the dry desert heat, the light fading outside the window. In this cinematic, almost poetic moment, Waltz supposedly pulled Julia close. He was too weak, too right, too frail to draw a map. All he had left were his words. He whispered to her, describing landmarks, a particular peak, a specific canyon, the way the setting sun cast a shadow that pointed the way. He told her about the mine, his mine, hidden away in the treacherous heart of the Superstitions. He didn't just give her clues, he gave her a vision, a treasure born from a deathbed confession. He allegedly described a stone box hidden under his bed, containing a sample of the incredibly rich gold ore from his mine, a physical testament to his story. The secret was no longer his alone. It was now a burden, a promise, and an obsession for Julia Thomas. Shortly after, Jacob Waltz died. The great flood of 1891 washed away his home and any other clues he might have left behind. All that remained was the whispered secret and the sample of gold. For Julia, the grief of losing a friend was now mixed with the fever of a quest. She had the key, or so she believed. She had the final words of the Dutchman himself. How could she not act? With the information she had, Julia Thomas organized an expedition. She wasn't a seasoned outdoorswoman, but she had the most valuable map of all. A mental one, pieced together from the fragmented whispers of a dying man. She, along with Reinhard Petrasch and his brother, set out for the Superstition Mountains. They were fueled by the conviction that they were on the verge of uncovering a fortune that would change their lives forever. But the mountains are a cruel keeper of secrets. The landscape is disorienting, a labyrinth of canyons, mesas, and thorny vegetation. The landmarks Waltz described could have been one of a dozen similar-looking peaks or rock formations. The desert sun is relentless, and water is scarce. Julia's expedition was a grueling failure. They searched for weeks, turning the Dutchman's dying words over and over in their minds, trying to match his descriptions to the unforgiving terrain around them. But the mine remained elusive. They found nothing. They returned to Phoenix, empty-handed, exhausted, and poorer than when they left. The financial cost of the expedition was immense. Julia reportedly sold her ice cream parlor and other assets to fund the search. She had gambled everything on a dead man's promise, and she had lost. The failure was a public one, and she became an object of some ridicule. The woman who chased a ghost story into the mountains and came back with nothing but debt and disappointment. But for Julia Thomas, it wasn't over. It was never over. The failure of her first expedition didn't extinguish the fire. It only fueled it. This is where her story turns from one of hope to one of lifelong, haunting obsession. She spent the rest of her days consumed by the search. She sold what little she had left. She is said to have sold versions of the map, crude drawings based on her memory of Waltz's words, to anyone willing to finance another trip into the mountains. Julia became a central figure in the mine's mythology, the first in a long, long line of Dutch hunters who would dedicate their lives, and in some cases lose them, to T's quests. Her story is a poignant one. Was she a fool who fell for an old man's told tales? Or was she the one person who truly knew the secret, but was simply unable to decipher the final puzzle? Her obsession is a testament to the power of the legend. It's a story of how a whispered secret, passed in a moment of vulnerability, can take root in a person's soul and define the rest of their life. Julia Thomas never found the gold. She died with the secret, just as Jacob Waltz had. Her failed search and the subsequent obsession she carried became a crucial chapter in the legend, adding a layer of tragic, human reality to the myth. She validates the story. Why would a practical businesswoman sacrifice everything her business, her reputation, her life savings for a fantasy. Her conviction lends credence to the idea that Waltz's story was real, that the gold is out there, waiting. Julia's legacy is not one of wealth, but of a question mark. She stands as the bridge between the old-timer, Jacob Waltz, and the modern era of treasure hunting. Her story ensures that the whispers from that Phoenix deathbed in 1891 would not fade into silence. Instead, they would echo through the canyons of the Superstition Mountains for more than a century, calling to all who are bold or foolish enough to listen. She is the Confidante, the first true believer, and the first to be consumed by the Dutchman's curse. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the journey. The story of Julia Thomas is a powerful reminder that this legend is about more than just gold. It's about human hope, desperation, and the secrets we take to our graves. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to have you with us as we continue to unravel this incredible mystery. See you next time. Hello and welcome back to our journey into the heart of one of America's greatest mysteries. In our last chapter, we witnessed the final moments of Jacob Waltz, the man at the center of the lost Dutchman's gold mine legend. With his passing, you might think the story ends, but in truth, this is where the legend truly begins. This is Chapter 8, The Aftermath. The year is 1891. Phoenix, Arizona, is still a fledgling town, but news travels fast, especially when it's whispered in hushed, excited tones. The news of Waltz's death wasn't just a notice of an old prospector's passing. It was the spark that lit a wildfire of gold fever. The story he had guarded so closely for decades was now out in the open. Julia Thomas and Reinhard Petresch, the two people who cared for Waltz in his final days, held what they believed was the key to a fortune beyond imagination. They had the ore, they had the stories, and most importantly, they had a vague idea of a location. Word of the Dutchman's gold mine spread like a contagion. It wasn't just a local rumor anymore. Newspapers in Phoenix, then across Arizona, and soon across the entire country, picked up the story. They printed sensational headlines, embellishing the tale with every edition. Jacob Waltz, a simple German immigrant, was posthumously transformed into a mysterious, almost mythical figure known only as the Dutchman. The stories painted a picture of a man who would appear in town with saddlebags heavy with gold, pure gold, the likes of which had never been seen. He would pay for his supplies, enjoy a few drinks, and then vanish back into the foreboding wilderness of the Superstition Mountains. The allure was irresistible. In a time when the West was still seen as a land of opportunity, the idea of a lost mine, a secret stash of gold just waiting to be found, was the ultimate American dream. It promised a shortcut from poverty to unimaginable wealth. And so, they came. They came in droves, seasoned prospectors with dusty hats and leathery skin, who had spent their lives chasing glints of color in the rock. Young men, full of ambition and dreams, leaving behind farms and families for a chance at glory. There were adventurers, scholars, and outright charlatans, all drawn to the jagged, imposing peaks of the Superstition Mountains. The range, once a place known mostly to the local Apache and a few hardy ranchers, became a destination, a pilgrimage site for the disciples of gold. The town of Mesa, at the foot of the mountains, boomed. It became the staging ground for countless expeditions. General stores couldn't keep their shelves stocked with picks, shovels, ropes, and canteens. Every saloon buzzed with theories, with fragments of maps sketched on napkins, with boasts of being the one who would finally solve the Dutchman's puzzle. The mountains, which had been a place of quiet, stark beauty, now echoed with the clang of pickaxes against rock and the hopeful shouts of men. But the superstitions are not a forgiving host. The dream that brought so many to their slopes quickly turned into a nightmare. The terrain is brutal, a labyrinth of steep canyons, thorny brush, and treacherous cliffs. The summer sun is merciless, capable of baking the life out of anyone unprepared. Water is scarce, a precious commodity that dictates survival. Rattlesnakes and other dangers lurk in the shadows of the rocks. The mountains, it seemed, guarded their secrets fiercely. Soon, the stories coming out of the superstitions were no longer just about gold. They were about the people who went in and never came out. Dozens of searchers vanished without a trace. They would march into the canyons, full of hope, and simply disappear. Sometimes, a mule would wander back into town, its pack still loaded, but its owner gone forever. Other times, all that was left was a deserted campsite, a cold fire pit, and the chilling silence of the desert. Those who did return often came back broken, not by failure, but by the mountain itself. They were empty-handed, their supplies depleted, their bodies gaunt and sunburned, and their spirits crushed. They spoke of the disorienting landscape, where every canyon looked the same, and every peak seemed to mock them. They told tales of sudden, violent storms that could flood a canyon in minutes, of strange noises in the night, and of an overwhelming feeling of being watched. They returned with nothing but harrowing stories, and a newfound respect, or rather fear, for the mountains. Julia Thomas and Reinhard Petrasch, the original inheritors of the secret, were among the first to learn this harsh lesson. In the summer of 1892, they mounted an expedition, confident that Waltz's deathbed descriptions would lead them straight to the source. They spent weeks searching under the brutal Arizona sun, but the landmarks Waltz described were vague and could have fit 100 different locations. They found nothing. Their resources dwindled, and they were forced to sell off the very gold, or that was their proof, just to finance their failed searches. The dream that had seemed so close slipped through their fingers like sand, and with every failed expedition, with every person who vanished, the legend grew. It began to transcend mere fact. The story was no longer just about a lost mine. It became a tapestry woven with threads of folklore, mystery, and tragedy. The mine wasn't just hidden. It was cursed. People began to whisper that the spirits of the Apache, whose sacred ground this was, protected the gold. They said the ghosts of all the prospectors who had perished in the search now roamed the canyons, forever guarding the treasure they could never find. The name Superstition Mountains suddenly felt incredibly apt. The legend took on a life of its own, becoming a cornerstone of Arizona folklore. The Dutchman's mine became a symbol not just of wealth, but of the untamed, mysterious, and dangerous spirit of the American West. It was a story that had everything: a mysterious foreigner, a hidden treasure, a dramatic landscape, and a long list of victims. It was a modern myth in the making. The line between Jacob Waltz the man and the Dutchman, the legend blurred until it disappeared completely. The facts of his life, his actual mining claims, his quiet existence were buried under an avalanche of speculation and fantasy. Was he a lone genius who stumbled upon an Apache treasure? Was he a thief? Was he part of a larger conspiracy? Did the mine even exist at all? Or was it just the rambling of a dying man? The lack of answers only made the story more powerful. From the 1890s onward, the search never really stopped. Each new decade brought a new generation of believers, each armed with a new theory, a new secret map, or a new interpretation of the clues. Books were written. Documentaries were filmed. The legend of the lost Dutchman's gold mine had become permanently etched into the cultural landscape. It was a story that refused to die, just like the dream of finding gold in those formidable, beautiful, and deadly mountains. The aftermath of Waltz's death wasn't an ending. It was the explosive beginning of a phenomenon that continues to this day. It transformed a personal secret into a public obsession, a prospector's tale into an enduring American legend. The gold may or may not be real, but the legend itself has become a treasure, drawing us back time and time again into the heart of the Superstition Mountains. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. The story is far from over, as the 20th century will bring even more drama and mystery to the hunt for the Dutchman-esque gold. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. We appreciate your support more than you know. Until next time, stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into one of history's most chilling enigmas. Today, in Chapter 9, we venture into the darkest part of the story: strange disappearances and cursed fortunes. The allure of gold is powerful, but as we're about to discover, the price for this particular treasure was far too high. As the legend of the lost mine grew, so did the number of brave, or perhaps foolish, souls who tried to find it. But a disturbing pattern began to emerge from the rugged, unforgiving landscape. Men, armed with maps, dreams, and determination, would march into the wilderness, only to vanish without a trace. It started with one or two, dismissed as unfortunate accidents or men who simply got lost in the vast expanse. But soon, the disappearances became too frequent to ignore. A haunting record began to form, a grim ledger of names whispered in hushed tones around campfires and in dusty saloons. There was the seasoned prospector, a man who knew the mountains like the back of his hand, who went in for a final look and was never seen again. Then, a group of 3 brothers, full of youthful confidence, who boasted they would return as rich men. Their supplies were found weeks later, untouched, but the brothers themselves had simply evaporated from the face of the earth. The accounts grew more sinister. In the rare instances when a body was recovered, the circumstances were deeply unsettling. These weren't men who had succumbed to the elements or animal attacks in a conventional way. The official reports were often vague, but the unofficial stories that circulated among the search parties painted a much grislier picture. They spoke of bodies found in bizarre, unnatural states, sometimes mutilated in ways that defied logical explanation. These weren't the marks of a bear or a mountain lion. The injuries were described as precise, almost ritualistic, leaving even the most hardened frontiersmen shaken to their core. More often than not, however, nothing was found at all. No body, no note, no sign of a struggle. Just empty silence. Where a human life used to be. Naturally, the local communities began to connect the dots. The whispers started quietly at first, but grew into a chorus of fear. This wasn't just bad luck. This wasn't just a dangerous piece of land. The mine, they said, was cursed. It was a place that didn't want to be found, a treasure that actively fought back against those who sought it. The stories of vanished men became cautionary tales, told to warn off newcomers. The mine was no longer a symbol of fortune. It had become a symbol of doom. This growing belief in a curse was profoundly reinforced by the local Native American tribes who had inhabited these lands for centuries. For them, this wasn't a new revelation. It was ancient knowledge. They had always spoken of certain areas that were to be avoided, sacred grounds that were not meant for mortal feet. When asked about the mine, their elders would speak of it not as a place of wealth, but as a gateway, a place guarded by powerful spirits or ancient guardians. They described it as a sacred and forbidden zone, a place where the balance of nature was intrinsically tied to its secrecy. To trespass there was to invite the wrath of these guardians, to upset a delicate spiritual harmony that would inevitably lead to tragedy. Their beliefs, which had once been dismissed as mere folklore by the newcomers, now seemed chillingly The native perspective offered an explanation that, while supernatural, felt more complete than any other. It explained why experienced outdoorsmen could disappear so completely. It explained the strange and terrifying state of the bodies that were found. The idea of a curse was no longer just a superstition. It was a theory supported by a growing pile of evidence, both anecdotal and spiritual. The mine wasn't just lost, it was protected. Think about the psychological impact of this. For any prospector, the physical challenges are immense: the harsh weather, the rugged terrain, the risk of starvation. But now, they had to contend with a new, invisible enemy. Fear. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow at dusk, every unexplained noise could be a sign that the curse was real, that the spirits of the mine were watching. The quest for gold became a battle not just against nature, but against the supernatural. It took a special kind of person to continue the search in the face of such terrifying legends. The stories became more specific over time. Tales of prospectors driven mad, found wandering the wilderness, muttering incoherently about shadows that move and whispers in the rock. Others spoke of equipment failing in inexplicable ways, compasses spinning wildly, tools breaking for no reason, and carefully mapped routes seeming to shift and change overnight. It was as if the land itself was actively trying to disorient and repel anyone who came too close. The curse, it seemed, didn't always kill. Sometimes it just broke you. These accounts served a dual purpose. They terrified potential seekers, but for a very select few. They only deepened the mystery and strengthened their resolve. To them, such powerful protection could only mean one thing: the treasure it guarded was real and of unimaginable value. The curse became part of the allure, a final test for those who believed they were worthy of claiming the prize. The mine was no longer just a source of gold. It was the heart of a legend, a place where the lines between the natural and supernatural world blurred. The disappearances, the strange mutilations, the native warnings, they all wove together into a dark and compelling tapestry, ensuring that even as the body count rose, the search for the cursed fortune would never truly end. The human spirit's desire for wealth and discovery is a powerful force, but as this chapter shows, some places hold secrets that are willing to fight back to remain hidden forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of our journey. The story only gets more intense from here. If you're enjoying this series, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel so you do unmiss what happens next. We love having you as part of our community. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Welcome back, everyone, to our ongoing journey into the heart of mystery and legend. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 10, Echoes of Apache Legends. This isn't just about gold. It's about the soul of a land and the voices that still echo through its canyons. So, grab your gear, quiet your mind, and let's step into a world where the past is always present. Before these peaks were known by any other name, the Apache people called them Diziu Aisha Sian, which translates to Thunder God's Home. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't just a geographical feature. It was a sacred, living entity, the dwelling place of a powerful deity. The storms that crash against these mountains weren't random weather patterns. They were the voice and fury of the Thunder God himself. This profound respect, this understanding of the mountains as a divine home, is the absolute foundation for everything that follows. It sets a stage for a story where nature isn't just a backdrop, but a central character with its own will and its own guardians. According to the Apache traditions passed down through generations, the Thunder God didn't guard his home alone. Within the labyrinthine canyons and hidden crevices of these mountains, powerful spirits reside. These aren't just spooky ghosts from campfire tales. They are the designated protectors of the land and, specifically, of the gold hidden within it. The stories describe these spirits as shapes capable of appearing as animals, sudden rock slides, or even whispering winds that can lead a person astray. Their sole purpose is to safeguard the sacred gold from those who would take it, especially outsiders who approach the mountains without the proper respect and understanding. The gold wasn't seen as a commodity for wealth. It was part of the mountain's spirit, a sacred element not meant for mortal hands driven by avarice. These tales served as a powerful warning to enter the Thunder God's home was to subject yourself to the judgment of its spiritual protectors. This brings us to a crucial theme that runs like a river through these Apache legends: the direct and unavoidable connection between greed, disrespect for nature, and tragedy. The stories are filled with cautionary accounts of those who came searching for gold. They weren't seeking to connect with the land. They were there to exploit it. In these tales, the prospector who hacks away at the earth without a second thought, the treasure hunter who ignores the warnings of the wind, or the man who sees the mountain only for its monetary value always meets a grim fate. They don't just fail to find the gold. They are consumed by the very mountains they sought to plunder. They get lost in canyons that seem to shift and change. They're caught in sudden, violent storms that appear from clear skies, or they simply vanish without a trace. The moral is crystal clear and unforgiving. When you approach sacred ground with a greedy heart, you are not just breaking a taboo, you are inviting disaster. The tragedy that befalls these individuals is not random bad luck. It is a direct consequence, a spiritual justice delivered by the mountain's guardians. The land protects itself from those who do not honor it. Now, let's take a moment to pause and reflect on what we're truly hearing in these stories. This is where legend and morality become so beautifully and powerfully intertwined. These aren't just adventure stories about lost treasure. They are profound ethical teachings, wrapped in the compelling narrative of myth. The legends of the Apache people teach a timeless lesson about our relationship with the natural world. They tell us that the earth is not a resource to be endlessly exploited, but a living system deserving of our utmost respect. The curse on the gold is, in reality, a metaphor for the natural and spiritual consequences of disrespect and greed. The stories ask us to consider our own intentions. Why do we seek what we seek? Is it for personal gain at any cost? Or is there a more harmonious way to exist within our environment? This intertwining of narrative and moral code is what gives these legends their enduring power. They challenge us to look beyond the glimmer of gold and see the deeper truths about balance, respect, and the invisible laws that govern our world. It's a lesson that is just as relevant today, in our modern world, as it was hundreds of years ago in the shadow of the Thunder God's home. The mountains, through these stories, are teaching us how to be better human beings. As we continue to explore this mystery, it's vital that we carry this perspective with us. The Apache legends are not just a colorful backdrop to a treasure hunt. They are the spiritual and ethical heart of the entire story. They provide a framework for understanding why this place is so fiercely protected, and why so many have met with misfortune. The tales of the Thunder God and the guardian spirits are a powerful reminder that some places are sacred, and some treasures are not meant to be owned, only revered from a distance. The echoes of these legends warn us that true wealth is not found in a vein of gold, but in a respectful relationship with the world around us. Ignoring these echoes, as many have learned, is a perilous mistake. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the echoes of Apache legends. It's a part of the story that deserves our full attention and respect. If you found this chapter as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button. And make sure you resubscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss what's coming next. We're getting closer to the heart of the mystery, and you won't want to be left behind. Until next time, stay curious and walk with respect. Welcome back to our journey into the heart of one of America's greatest mysteries, the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. In our last chapter, we delved into the origins of the legend, the tales of Jacob Waltz, and the cryptic clues he left behind. As the 19th century closed, Waltz took the secret of his mine to the grave. But in doing so, he ignited a fire in the hearts of dreamers, prospectors, and adventurers across the country. The 20th century was dawning, and with it, a new era of treasure hunting was about to begin. The Superstition Mountains, once the formidable domain of a dying prospector's memory, were about to become a stage for ambition, tragedy, and an unrelenting obsession. The turn of the century didn't diminish the legend, it amplified it. From the early 1900s right through the 1950s, the Superstitions saw a constant stream of hopefuls. These weren't just grizzled prospectors anymore. They were everyday people, clerks, farmers, veterans, all bitten by the gold bug, all convinced they were the one who could decipher Waltz's puzzle. They came with faded maps, dog-eared books, and a belief that fortune was just one more hike away. The mountains became a magnet for those willing to risk everything. They poured into the small towns surrounding the range, their eyes fixed on the jagged peaks, their conversations buzzing with theories and speculation. The legend had taken on a life of its own, transforming from a local folktale into a national phenomenon. Each person who arrived added another layer to the story, another thread in the rich tapestry of the Lost Dutchman's legacy. Among the countless searchers who braved the treacherous terrain, one man's story stands out, not for its success, but for its chilling and tragic end. His name was Adolph Ruth. In the summer of 1931, Ruth, a 66-year-old amateur prospector and retired government worker from Washington, D.C., arrived in Arizona with a singular focus. He wasn't just chasing a rumor. He believed he held the key. Ruth claimed to possess antique maps, supposedly passed down through a family named Gonzalez, who he believed were descendants of the original Peraltas, the family from the earliest versions of the legend. These maps, he was certain, would lead him directly to the hidden Peralta mine, which many equated with the Lost Dutchman's. He was so confident, he told his son Erwin that if he didn't return by a certain date, it meant he had either found the gold or met his end. It was a fateful and prophetic statement. Ruth hired local guides to take him into the mountains, but his age and the brutal June heat made the journey incredibly difficult. His guides, concerned for his safety, pleaded with him to turn back. But Ruth was resolute. He insisted on being left at his chosen campsite, promising to hike out on his own in a few weeks. He waved him off, armed with his maps and his unshakable conviction. The guides departed, leaving Ruth alone with the silent, watchful mountains. Weeks turned into a month, and there was no sign of Adolph Ruth. His son Erwin, growing frantic, arrived in Arizona and launched a massive search effort. 4 months, volunteers and authorities scoured the canyons and peaks, but the mountains kept their secrets. It seemed Adolph Ruth had simply vanished into the unforgiving wilderness. Then, in December 1931, 6 months after he was last seen, a discovery was made that would forever cement Ruth's place in the legend. A survey party stumbled upon a human skull in the desert foothills. It had 2 holes in it, which a medical examiner later determined were caused by a firearm. 2 months after that, in a different location, miles away, the rest of Adolph Ruth's skeleton was found, along with his belongings. The scene was bizarre. His clothes were neatly folded, and his personal effects were there. But his pistol was missing, and most disturbingly, his checkbook was found with a note scrawled inside. It read, in Latin, Veni vidi, vici I came, I saw, I conquered, and beneath that, a description of the mine's location. Crucially, the Peralta maps he had prized so dearly were gone. The official cause of death was left undetermined. Some said he died of natural causes, or a heart attack, and the holes in his skull were from scavenging animals. But the story that gripped the public imagination was far more sinister. Had Ruth found the mine? Did he write the triumphant note just before being ambushed and murdered for his maps? The discovery of the skull, separate from the body, and the missing maps created a sensational new chapter in the Dutchman legend. The press had a field day. Newspapers across the country ran headlines that screamed of murder and mystery in the Superstitions. Skull in the desert became a phrase synonymous with the deadly allure of the Dutchman-esque gold. Adolph Ruth's tragic end wasn't a deterrent. It was fuel on the fire. It proved, in the minds of many, that the mine was real and that its secret was worth killing for. Ruth's story was just one of many, but it was the most sensational. Throughout this period, the Superstition Mountains seemed to demand a human price for the secrets they held. The press eagerly reported on every disappearance, every skeleton found, every close call. Each new tragedy was spun into a dramatic tale, reinforcing the mountain's reputation as a place of danger and death. These stories weren't just local news. They were syndicated across the nation, captivating a public hungry for adventure and mystery during the lean years of the Great Depression. The Lost Dutchman wasn't just a prospector's dream anymore. It was public entertainment, a real-life drama playing out in the Arizona desert. The deaths were often attributed to a mysterious guardian of the mine, a shadowy figure or curse that protected the gold from outsiders. This only added to the mystique, turning the search from a simple treasure hunt into a battle against supernatural forces. The legend evolved with each telling. It was no longer just Jacob Waltz's story. It was Adolph Ruth's story. It was the story of the headless prospector, the story of the phantom Apache warriors, the story of the cursed land itself. The lines between fact, folklore, and outright fabrication blurred until they were indistinguishable. Every clue was debated, every map analyzed, every landmark scrutinized. Was Weaver's needle the key? What abodes? The eye of the horse or the face on the rock? The community of Dutchman hunters became a subculture of its own, with its own heroes, villains, and martyrs. They shared information, but they also guarded their own secrets, jealously, ever watchful of their rivals. The search for gold had become a full-blown obsession, a modern-day quest for the Holy Grail set against the stunning and deadly backdrop of the American Southwest. As we move past the midpoint of the 20th century, the era of the lone prospector began to fade, but the obsession did not. Technology advanced, and search methods became more sophisticated. But the mountains remained as wild and unforgiving as ever. The ghosts of Adolph Ruth and the countless others who perished in their quest seemed to linger in the canyons. Their stories a constant reminder of the high stakes involved. The legend had proven its power to inspire hope, to drive men to obsession, and, all too often, to lead them to their doom. The gold remained elusive, hidden away, but the hunt was far from over. A new generation of searchers was on the horizon, ready to take up the challenge. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of our exploration. The story of the Lost Dutchman is a story of human nature itself, our dreams, our greed, and our unyielding desire to uncover the unknown. If you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, where we'll look at how the legend transformed in the modern era. We'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome, fellow adventurers, to another journey into the heart of history's most compelling mysteries. Today, were venturing back into the sun-scorched, treacherous landscape of the Superstition Mountains, a place where legends are born and fortunes are lost. We're delving into a story that has haunted these canyons for nearly a century, a tale of gold, obsession, and a truly chilling end. This is the story of Adolph Ruth. Our story begins in 1931, a time when the world was gripped by the Great Depression. People were desperate, and tales of hidden treasure burned brighter than ever. For Adolph Ruth, a 66-year-old veterinarian and amateur explorer from Washington, D.C., the allure of the lost Dutchman's gold mine was an irresistible call. Ruth wasn't just a dreamer. He was a man with a map. He claimed his son, Erwin, had saved the life of a man from the Peralta family, and in gratitude, they had gifted him antique maps detailing the mine's location. With these maps in hand, Ruth believed he held the key to unlocking one of America's greatest legends. He arrived in Arizona in the blistering heat of early summer, a time when even the most seasoned prospectors knew to stay clear of the mountains. But Ruth was undeterred. His confidence was absolute. He hired 2 local ranchers, Tex Berkeley and Jack Keenan, to guide him to a drop-off point, a place called Willow Springs. From there, he planned to venture into the wilderness, alone, for 2 weeks. The ranchers pleaded with him, warning him of the brutal heat, the rattlesnakes, and the unforgiving terrain. But Ruth, stubborn and convinced of his imminent success, would not be swayed. Before he set off, he wrote letters to his family, letters brimming with an almost feverish optimism. He told his wife he was on the verge of making them wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. In a postcard to a friend, he wrote, "I'm going into the Superstition Mountains after the lost Dutchman. I have the Peralta maps. I expect to be back in Mesa in about 14 days." These weren't the words of a man anticipating danger. They were the words of a man certain he was about to claim his destiny. On June 14th, 1931, Barkley and Keenan left Adolph Ruth at the trailhead. He had his supplies, his maps, and his unwavering belief. They watched him walk into the labyrinth of rock and cactus until he disappeared from view. It was the last time anyone would see him alive. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Adolph Ruth did not return. His family grew frantic, and a search was organized. 4 weeks, search parties scoured the canyons, but the superstitions held their secrets tight. The unforgiving landscape seemed to have swallowed him whole. The search was eventually called off, and for 6 long months, the mystery of Adolph Ruth's disappearance hung heavy over the region. Had he simply succumbed to the elements? Had he gotten lost? Or had something far more sinister occurred? The answer, when it finally came, was more gruesome than anyone could have imagined. In December of 1931, a separate expedition, an archaeological team led by a man named Dr. Apache, was exploring the area. They were deep in the wilderness when they made a discovery that would send a chill down the spine of Arizona. There, lying on the ground, was a human skull. It was bleached white by the sun, but what was truly shocking was the clean, distinct hole on the left side, just above the temple. It was unmistakably a bullet hole. Forensic analysis later confirmed the skull belonged to Adolph Ruth. The discovery immediately changed everything. This was no longer a simple case of a lost hiker. This was a potential murder. The story exploded in newspapers across the country. The mystery deepened a month later in January 1932 when another group of hikers drawn to the area by this news stumbled upon the rest of Ruth's remains about 3/4 of a mile from where the skull was found. His body was found crammed beneath a Palo Verde tree, as if hastily hidden. His clothes were tattered, but investigators made another bizarre discovery in his coat pocket. A small, weathered notebook. Inside, written in Ruth's own hand, were the Latin words Veni, Vidi. Vici I came, I saw, I conquered. Below that, a detailed description of the mine's location. The final, chilling entry simply read, about 200 feet across from a cave. But the most crucial pieces of the puzzle were missing. His gear was scattered. His 6-shooter was gone. His saddlebags were empty. And most importantly, the Peralta maps, the very reason he had ventured into this deadly wilderness, were nowhere to be found. This is where the story fractures into a dozen different theories, each one more tantalizing than the last. The official verdict at the time was suicide, a conclusion that seems almost impossible. Why would a man who believed he had found the mine, who wrote "I conquered," then take his own life? And how could he have shot himself in that precise location, with the bullet trajectory suggesting an external shooter? The suicide theory has been largely dismissed by historians and investigators ever since. So, what happened to Adolph Ruth? The most prevalent theory points to murder. Many believe that Ruth wasn't alone in his search. Perhaps he was followed by someone who knew he had the maps. Did he find the mine, only to be ambushed by a rival prospector who killed him and stole the maps, along with any gold he may have found? This theory suggests a cold-blooded killing, a crime of greed committed in a lawless place where a man could easily disappear. The missing gun and the stolen maps certainly lend heavy credibility to this idea. But there's another, more spectral theory, one that whispers from the very rocks of the Superstitions. This is the theory of the curse of the Dutchman. Local lore is filled with tales of ghostly guardians, spectral miners who protect the gold from all who seek it. For generations, people have claimed that anyone who gets too close to the mine's location will meet a violent end. Was Adolph Ruth a victim of this curse? Did he disturb something ancient and powerful? Something that does not want to be found. It's a fantastical notion, but in a place as mysterious as the Superstition Mountains, it's a theory that refuses to die. And what about his notebook? The note that read, Veni Vidi. Wiki. Did he truly find the mine? Was he on the verge of revealing its location to the world before his life was cut short? Or was it merely the hopeful scribbling of a man lost and delirious, clinging to his dream as his life slipped away? The note says he conquered, but the state of his remains tells a story of utter defeat. The mystery of Adolph Ruth has become a cornerstone of the lost Dutchman legend. His skull, with its haunting bullet hole, is a tangible, terrifying piece of evidence in a story built on rumor and myth. It serves as a grim warning to all who would follow in his footsteps. He went into the mountains with maps and absolute certainty, and he came out in pieces. His secret location and his murderer, lost to the ages. His story is a chilling reminder that in the quest for gold, the price can sometimes be your life. What do you think happened? Was it a calculated murder by a ruthless rival, or the work of a supernatural guardian protecting its treasure? Let me know your theories down in the comments below. If you found this dive into the unknown as fascinating as I did, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations into history, yes, greatest mysteries. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious. Hello and welcome back to our journey into the heart of history's greatest enigmas. In our last chapter, we delved deep into the legends surrounding the lost Dutchman's gold mine. But today, we're stepping out of the realm of folklore and into the world of hard facts and heated debate. This is Chapter 13, Skeptics and Believers. It's a classic showdown between evidence and faith, a story that questions not just the existence of a mine, but the very nature of belief itself. So, grab your gear, because this part of the trail is where the path divides. Let's start with the skeptics. For every tantalizing clue pointing to a hidden treasure, there's a team of experts ready to pour cold water on the idea. Geologists, for instance, have scoured the Superstition Mountains for decades. They've mapped the rock formations, analyzed the mineral deposits, and their conclusion is overwhelmingly consistent. The geology of this region simply does unsupport the existence of a rich, mother-lode gold vein, like the one described in the legends. The gold that has been found here is typically placer gold, small flakes and nuggets washed down from various sources, not a single, massive deposit. They argue that if a mine as rich as the Dutchman's existed, its geological signature would be impossible to hide from modern prospecting technology. There would be spoil heaps, altered rock, and a clear mineralogical footprint. So far, nothing. Then we have the historians, who approach the legend from a different angle. They've meticulously sifted through historical record census data, mining claims, newspaper articles, and personal diaries from the 19th century. What do they find? A distinct lack of concrete, verifiable evidence. Jacob Waltz was a real person. Yes, he was a prospector, but the records paint a picture of a man who was moderately successful at best, not someone sitting on a fortune. Many of the most dramatic parts of the story, the Peralta family, the violent map, the dramatic deathbed confession only seem to appear in print decades after Waltz's death, growing more elaborate with each retelling. Historians suggest that the legend is a classic example of folklore, a story woven from whispers and embellished over time, fueled by the universal human desire for riches and adventure. They point out that many of the so-called clues are vague enough to fit multiple locations, a hallmark of a fabricated tale rather than a real guide. Even the timeline of the story raises red flags for readers. The tales of the Spanish and Mexican mining operations by the Peralta family, for example, are not well supported by official records from that era. While there was Spanish exploration in Arizona, there's little to suggest a major hidden gold mine was established and then lost in the Superstition Mountains. Skeptics argue that these elements were likely added later to give the story a sense of historical depth and romanticism. They see the lost Dutchman legend not as a historical event, but as a cultural phenomenon, a campfire story that got out of hand. For them, the mine isn't lost in the mountains. It's lost in the pages of fiction. Every attempt to find it has failed, not because the clues are difficult, but because the destination itself is a mirage. But what about the believers? For them, this absence of evidence, it's not evidence of absence. They stand firm, armed with their own set of counter-arguments and what they claim is tangible, physical proof. They say, of course, the geologists can't find it. It was designed to be hidden. They believe the mine's entrance was deliberately concealed, perhaps with a rock slide or by diverting a stream over it, a common practice for prospectors trying to protect their claims. They argue that the Superstition Mountains are so vast and rugged, with countless canyons and caves, that even modern technology could easily miss a single, cleverly hidden opening. It's a wilderness that guards its secrets well, and the idea that we've mapped every square inch is, to them, laughable. Believers also present what they consider physical evidence. Terrear de Peralta stones, a set of engraved stones discovered in the 1950s, that allegedly contained a complex map to the mine, complete with coded messages and astronomical alignments. While many experts have dismissed these stones as a modern hoax, believers insist they are authentic relics, left by the Peralta family. They point to strange rock carvings, oddly placed trail markers, and peculiar formations that seem to match the cryptic clues from the legend. One of the most famous clues is the horse looking at the moon, or the priest pointing the way, rock formations that believers have spent years trying to locate and interpret. For them, these aren't random geological features. They are signposts on a treasure map left by those who came before. Furthermore, the believers have their own oral histories and first-hand accounts. They share stories passed down through generations. Tales of prospectors who came out of the mountains with richer samples, only to disappear or die under mysterious circumstances before they could reveal their source. They speak of deathbed confessions, not just from Jacob Waltz, but from others who claim to have stumbled upon the mine. These stories, while dismissed by historians as hearsay, form the very bedrock of the believer's faith. They argue that history isn't just what's written in official documents. It's also what's carried in the hearts and memories of the people. For every academic paper debunking the legend, there is a treasure hunter who will tell you they held a piece of Dutchman-esque gold in their own hand. This brings us to the fascinating core of this chapter, the psychology of the treasure hunt itself. It's a powerful clash between hope and reason. For the skeptic, the logical conclusion is that the mine doesn't exist. The evidence is simply not there. Continuing to search is irrational, a waste of time, money, and for some, their very lives. But for the believer, logic takes a backseat to something far more compelling. Hope. Hope is the fuel that drives them back into the wilderness, season after season. It's the belief that they will be the one to solve the puzzle, to succeed where thousands have failed. It's the dream of changing their life overnight, of proving all the doubters wrong. This isn't just about gold, it's about the quest. Treasure hunting provides a sense of purpose, an adventure in a world that can often feel mundane. It's a battle of wits against the landscape and against the ghosts of the past. Each new clue, no matter how tenuous, delivers a jolt of dopamine, a feeling that you're getting closer. This psychological reward system can be incredibly powerful, creating a loop where the search itself becomes more important than the treasure. Reason might tell you to quit, but the siren song of what if is too alluring to ignore. What if I'm just one canyon away? What if that's the rock formation everyone else missed? This hope is what transforms a hobby into an obsession. And finally, we must acknowledge the undeniable allure of a mystery that defies logic. Humans are naturally drawn to stories that can't be neatly explained. We love a good puzzle, especially one that has stumped the experts. The Lost Dutchman's gold mine is the ultimate cold case. The more experts say it's impossible, the more some people want to prove them wrong. It represents a pocket of the world that hasn't been fully mapped, digitized, and explained away by science. It's a reminder that there might still be magic and mystery left, hidden just beyond the edge of our understanding. In a way, whether the mine is real or not is almost beside the point. The legend has taken on a life of its own. It has inspired books, movies, and countless expeditions. It has become a cornerstone of Arizona's identity and a powerful symbol of the American West. The story of skeptics versus believers isn't just about a hole in the ground filled with gold. It's about the human spirit. It's about our willingness to question, our capacity to believe, and our unending search for something more, whether it's a vein of precious metal or a grand adventure. The treasure may not be the gold, but the enduring power of the story itself. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of doubt and belief. The debate is far from over, and the mountains continue to hold their silence. What do you think? Are you a skeptic or a believer? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this series, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our final chapter. We appreciate your support more than you know. Until next time, keep questioning. Hello and welcome back to our journey through the myths and mysteries of the American West. In our final chapter, we step out of the dusty pages of history and into the present day to explore the superstition wilderness as it is now. What became of this land, so steeped in legend, bloodshed, and the feverish dreams of gold? Let's find out. Today, the Superstition Wilderness is a federally designated area, a vast expanse of rugged, sun-scorched beauty that draws a new kind of prospector. These modern visitors aren't searching for gold with pickaxes and mules, but for something just as precious: adventure, solitude, and a connection to the raw, untamed spirit of the desert. Every year, thousands of hikers, campers, and photographers follow the same trails where Jacob Waltz once walked, where prospectors vanished, and where Apache warriors once stood guard. Imagine setting up your tent under a canopy of 1 billion stars. The silence of the desert so profound you can almost hear the echoes of the past. You might be camping in the very same canyon where men whispered tales of a hidden mine, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight, just as yours is now. The landscape itself is the main character in this ongoing story. It's a place where the line between history and the present feels incredibly thin. As you hike, keep your eyes peeled. The desert holds its secrets close, but it offers clues to those who know where to look. Fading petroglyphs, etched into the dark desert varnish of a cliff face, are scattered throughout the wilderness. These ancient symbols, left by the Salato or Hohokam peoples centuries ago, are silent witnesses to all that has transpired. They watch the arrival of the Apache, the Spanish, and the American prospectors. Each swirl, stick figure, and geometric design is a story we can no longer fully read, a ghostly message from a lost world. The trails themselves tell a story. Somiare, well-maintained paths, like the popular Peralta Trail, which guides hikers to the breathtaking Fremont Saddle with its panoramic views of Weaver's Needle. But other trails are little more than whispers on the landscape, lost trails that fade in and out of existence, washed away by flash floods or overgrown by prickly pear and cholla. Exploring these forgotten paths feels like chasing ghosts. You can almost sense the ghosts of donkeys carrying heavy packs, their hooves clattering on the same loose rocks under your boots. The silent canyons, with their towering walls of volcanic tuff, amplify this feeling. In the quiet moments of dawn or dusk, when the light turns the rock formations into shades of orange and purple, it's easy to understand how this place inspired such powerful legends. So, how did this wild, formidable landscape, once seen as a resource to be exploited, become a protected wilderness? The answer is deeply intertwined with the very legends we've been exploring. By the early 20th century, the stories of the Lost Dutchman mine had become an inseparable part of Arizona's identity. The fame or infamia, the superstitions had spread far and wide. This reputation, this aura of mystery and danger, paradoxically helped to save it. In 1939, The U.S. Forest Service designated a portion of the area as the Superstition Primitive Area. The goal was to preserve its wild character. Then, in 1964, with the passage of the landmark Wilderness Act, it was expanded and officially became the Superstition Wilderness. The government recognized that the value of this land wasn't just in the minerals beneath the ground, but in its untamed nature, its scenic beauty, and its cultural and historical significance. The legends, in a way, became its shield. The desire to protect the setting of these great American myths was a powerful motivator for conservation. The very stories that drew people in to exploit it eventually led to its preservation for all of us to experience. Today, the Superstition Wilderness is managed with a leave-no-trace ethos. It's a place where nature is allowed to run its course. The dangers are still very real, a fact that the Park Service is quick to emphasize. The desert is a place of extremes. The summer heat can be lethal. Water sources are scarce and unreliable, and flash floods can turn a dry wash into a raging torrent in minutes. Every year, search and rescue teams are called out to find lost or injured hikers. The wilderness does not suffer fools gladly, and it demands respect, preparation, and humility. Getting lost here is no small matter. The maze of canyons can disorient even experienced outdoors people. The ghosts of those who perished in these mountains serve as a stark reminder of its unforgiving nature. Yet, for every story of danger, there are 1,000 stories of peace. For those who come prepared, the desert offers a profound sense of tranquility that is hard to find anywhere else in the modern world. It has a place to disconnect from the noise of daily life and reconnect with something more fundamental. The subtle beauty of a blooming cactus, the sight of a Gila monster lumbering across the trail, the call of a canyon wren echoing off the cliffs. These are the treasures found in the superstitions today. The desert teaches you to pay attention, to notice the small details, to appreciate the resilience of life in a harsh environment. It's a place of quiet contemplation, where the grandeur of the landscape can put your own worries into perspective. The same silence that might feel menacing to some feels like a deep, calming peace to others. It's this duality, this blend of danger and serenity, of harshness and beauty, that defines the soul of the Superstition Wilderness. So, what about the lost Dutchman mine? Does anyone still search for it? Absolutely. Even now, a few dedicated die-hard Dutch hunters continue the search, armed with old maps, modern GPS devices, and an unshakable belief that they will be the one to finally solve the mystery. They are the keepers of the flame, the modern torchbearers of a tradition that goes back nearly 150 years. Most, however, admit they are searching for the adventure more than the gold itself. The thrill is in the hunt, in the puzzle, in walking through a landscape charged with legend. But for the vast majority of us, the true treasure of the superstitions is the wilderness itself. It has the legacy of a landscape so powerful it spawned some of America's greatest legends. It's a living museum, a sanctuary for wildlife, and a public playground for the soul. The gold of the superstitions was never just about a precious metal. It was about the dream of discovery, the allure of the unknown, and the spirit of the American frontier. And that spirit is still alive and well, waiting for you in the shadow of Weaver's Needle. The story of the Superstition Mountains and the lost Dutchman mine is not over. It continues with every person who steps onto its trails, every person who gazes up at its towering peaks and wonders. What if the final chapter is not yet written? Perhaps you will write a page of it yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the history, mystery, and enduring legend of the Superstition Wilderness. It's been a privilege to share these stories with you. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next adventure. Until next time, stay curious. Intro music begins with a modern adventurous feel, perhaps mixed with the sound of a crackling fire and a digital map interface. Welcome back, fellow explorers, to our ongoing journey through the legends of lost gold. In our previous chapters, we delved into dusty maps and whispered tales from centuries past. But today, we fast forward to the present. This is Chapter 15. The Modern Gold Hunters. The dream of finding treasure hasn't faded with time. It's just gone digital. The romantic image of a grizzled prospector with a pickaxe and a mule has been replaced by a new breed of adventurer, armed not just with grit, but with technology that would have seemed like magic to the old-timers. Forget faded parchments and cryptic poems. Today's treasure hunters navigate the wilderness with pinpoint GPS accuracy, mapping out remote locations to the exact coordinate. They launch drones into the sky, their high-resolution cameras scanning treacherous canyons and dense forests from a god's eye view, spotting anomalies in the landscape that no human eye could catch from the ground. And, of course, there's the quintessential tool of the modern hunter, the advanced metal detector. These aren't your grandpa's clunky devices. Modern detectors are sophisticated machines, capable of distinguishing between different types of metal, estimating depth, and filtering out the junk to zero in on potential treasure. It's a fusion of old-world passion and new-world precision. This technological revolution has given rise to a fascinating and diverse community of motor and ape. You've probably seen them on platforms just like this one. They are the YouTube explorers, charismatic adventurers who document every step of their quest, taking millions of viewers along for the ride. They wade through icy rivers, rappel into forgotten mine shafts, and share the raw thrill of a promising signal from their detector. Their channels are a mix of history, documentary, survival show, and reality TV, all fueled by the infectious hope of striking it rich. Alongside them are the amateur geologists, men and women who spend their weekends poring over geological surveys and satellite imagery. They're not just looking for a glint of yellow. They're reading the story of the Earth itself, searching for the specific quartz veins and placer deposits where gold is most likely to be found. They understand the science behind the legend, and their approach is methodical, patient, and deeply informed. And then there are the obsessed historians, the keepers of the flame. These are the folks who haunt local archives and digital libraries, cross-referencing old diaries, newspaper clippings, and land deeds. They believe the clues aren't just in the ground, but hidden in plain sight within the historical record, waiting for someone with enough dedication to piece them all together. Now, you might be thinking, this is all great fun, but does anyone actually find anything? The answer, surprisingly, is yes. While a massive, lost Spanish treasure chest remains the stuff of legend, the stories of modern finds are more common than you might think, and they are just as exciting. Take the story of a family from California who, while walking their dog on their own property, noticed the top of a rusty can sticking out of the ground. Ado curiosité du guitab. It led to another, and another. In total, they unearthed 8 cans, filled with over 1,400 gold coins from the 19th century, a hoard valued at over $10 million. They were literally walking over a fortune for years. Then there's the tale of a hobbyist in the UK, using his metal detector in a farmer's field. He got a signal, dug down, and pulled out what he thought was an old piece of junk. It turned out to be the Staffordshire hoard, the largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver metalwork ever found, completely rewriting a chapter of English history. These aren't just isolated incidents. Every year, there are credible reports from people who, through a combination of research, technology, and sheer luck, unearth something extraordinary. A gold nugget in a creek bed, a collection of colonial era coins, a forgotten strongbox in the walls of an old house. These discoveries keep the dream alive for everyone else. They are the tangible proof that history is not just in museums. It's still buried beneath our feet. What does this tell us? It tells us that the fundamental human drive for discovery is timeless. The tools change, the methods evolve, but the core impulse remains the same. It's the same curiosity that drove ancient mariners to sail beyond the horizon, the same spirit that propelled the pioneers of the Old West into uncharted territory. It's the thrill of the unknown, the tantalizing possibility that the next step, the next swing of the shovel, the next beep from the detector could change your life forever. It's more than just the pursuit of wealth. For many modern hunters, the real treasure is the adventure itself. It's about connecting with history in a physical, tangible way. It's about the peace of being out in nature, the intellectual challenge of solving a centuries-old puzzle, and the camaraderie of sharing the quest with a community of like-minded enthusiasts. Finding gold would be a fantastic bonus, but the journey, the research, the exploration, the what-if is the true reward. This enduring spirit of exploration ensures that as long as there are stories of lost fortunes, there will be people willing to look for them, armed with the best tools of their generation. The modern gold hunter is a testament to the fact that our fascination with the past and our hope for the future are two sides of the same precious coin. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of our adventure. The hunt is far from over, and the greatest discoveries may still lie ahead. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of modern treasure hunting, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next chapter. Until then, keep exploring. Hello, and welcome back to our journey. Today, we arrive at a place of reflection, a moment to pause and consider the very force that has propelled us this far. We're talking about the lure of the unknown, that magnetic pull towards the horizon, towards the stories whispered on the wind. Why is it that tales of lost treasures, hidden Cedius, and ancient secrets captivate us so profoundly? It's a question as old as humanity itself. Think about it. From the epic of Gilgamesh searching for immortality to the modern-day adventurer seeking unclimbed peaks, the narrative is strikingly similar. We are a species defined by our curiosity, our innate desire to peek behind the curtain, to discover what lies beyond the map's edge. Myths like the one we've been exploring aren't just stories. They are mirrors reflecting our deepest yearnings. They speak to a part of us that believes the world is still full of magic, that not every corner has been illuminated, and that something truly extraordinary is waiting just for us to find it. On the surface, many of these legends, including our own, revolve around the promise of tangible rewards: gold, jewels, forgotten fortunes. The allure of hidden wealth is a powerful motivator, no doubt. It represents freedom, security, a life transformed. The idea of stumbling upon a treasure that could change everything is a potent fantasy, one that has fueled countless expeditions and captured the public imagination for centuries. It's the ultimate lottery ticket, a shortcut to a dream life. Who wouldn't be tempted by the thought of uncovering a chest overflowing with gold coins or a vault of priceless artifacts? It's a simple, primal desire for a better, easier life. But if we dig a little deeper, just beneath that glittering surface, we find something far more profound. The search for treasure is often a stand-in for a deeper search for meaning. It's not just about the gold. It's about the quest itself. It's about testing our limits, proving our worth, and connecting with something larger than our everyday existence. The journey becomes a crucible, forging character and revealing truths about ourselves we never knew. The hardships faced, the puzzles solved, the alliances formed, these are the real treasures. The wealth is just the excuse we give ourselves to embark on a journey of self-discovery. This quest for meaning is universal. We all search for a purpose, for a sense of our place in the grand tapestry of the universe. Myths provide a framework for this search. They give us heroes to emulate, challenges to imagine ourselves overcoming, and a destination that represents enlightenment or fulfillment. The hidden city isn't just a place of riches. It's a symbol of a higher state of being, a sanctuary of wisdom, a lost paradise. Finding it is symbolic of finding our true selves, of achieving a sense of wholeness that our mundane lives often lack. The physical journey becomes a metaphor for our spiritual or psychological journey. And what better stage for such a profound journey than the desert? The desert, in our story, and in countless others, is more than just a setting. It is a character in its own right, a powerful metaphor for the unknown itself. Picture it: a vast, seemingly endless expanse of sand and sky. Its sheer scale is humbling, reminding us of our own smallness in the face of nature and time. It is a landscape stripped bare of all distractions, forcing a confrontation with oneself. There is nowhere to hide in the desert, neither from the relentless sun nor from the thoughts in your own mind. The silence of the desert is another of its defining features. In our noisy, chaotic world, true silence is a rarity, almost a forgotten luxury. But in the desert, the silence is immense, profound. It's a silence that isn't empty, but is filled with a subtle, ancient presence. It's in this vast quiet that you can finally hear the whispers of the past, the echoes of forgotten civilizations, and the quiet voice of your own intuition. The desert holds its secrets close, but for those who are patient, for those who learn to listen, it will eventually reveal them. Every dune, every rock formation, feels like a guardian of some long-held truth. This landscape is the perfect canvas for a story about searching. Its emptiness is not a void but a space of potential. It represents the blank page of our own future, the uncharted territory of our own souls. To cross the desert is to undertake a rite of passage. You must rely on your own resilience, your knowledge, your faith. You face thirst, not just for water, but for knowledge. You face mirages, illusions that test your perception and your resolve. These are not just physical challenges. They are spiritual tests. The desert strips away the non-essential, leaving only what truly matters. Courage, determination, and the will to keep moving forward, even when the destination is unseen. The lure of the unknown, then, is a complex and beautiful human trait. It's the engine of progress, the source of art, and the heart of adventure. It's the voice that whispers, "What if?" It's the feeling that drives a scientist to explore the mysteries of the cosmos, an artist to create something entirely new, and an explorer to set foot on undiscovered land. It's a recognition that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. These myths persist not because we necessarily believe they are literally true, but because they speak a deeper truth about our own nature. They remind us that the greatest treasures are not material. The true reward is in the growth we experience, the wisdom we gain, and the stories we can tell. The journey changes us. We may start out seeking gold, but we end up finding ourselves. The person who finishes the quest is never the same as the one who began it. And perhaps that is the ultimate secret hidden in the heart of the desert. The ultimate treasure that all these legends are truly pointing towards. Transformation. It's the understanding that the map is not the territory, and the destination is often just an excuse for the journey. The real magic lies in taking that first step into the vast, silent, and secretive expanse, driven by nothing more than a story and a fundamental human need to discover what lies beyond the horizon. It is, and always will be, one of the most powerful forces in our lives. Thank you so much for joining me in this reflection. It's a joy to explore these deeper themes with you. If these ideas resonated with you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more chapters of our journey. We have more to uncover, and I can't wait to continue the adventure with you. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the heart of mystery. Today, we're diving into Chapter 17, Legends Within Legends. We've all heard the big stories, the grand quests for lost fortunes. But have you ever noticed how these epic tales have their own little side quests? It's like a story having children, and each one goes on its own adventure. The legend of the lost Dutchman's gold mine isn't just one story. It's a whole family of them. Think about it. The main legend is this massive, magnetic force, pulling in dreamers and adventurers for over a century. But as it pulls people in, it also spins off smaller, more personal tales. Tales of lost soldiers' gold, for instance. Whispers of a payroll wagon from the Civil War era, ambushed by its heavy chest of gold coins, buried somewhere in the jagged peaks of the Superstitions, never to be seen again. Is it connected to the Dutchman's mine? Some say the soldiers stumbled upon the Peralta's workings. Others believe it's a completely separate treasure, just another layer of gold hidden beneath the desert sun. These stories are everywhere once you start looking. They're like echoes in the canyons. You'll hear about Jesuit caches hidden by priests fleeing persecution centuries ago. The legend says they concealed vast amounts of gold and silver artifacts from their missions in secret caves, marking them with cryptic symbols that only the faithful could decipher. People spend their lives searching for these symbols on rocks, trying to piece together a map that may or may not exist. Is this the same treasure Jacob Waltz found? Or is it another ghost, another golden dream haunting the same stretch of land? And then there are the tunnels. The stories of ancient, man-made tunnels, crisscrossing deep beneath the Superstition Mountains, are perhaps the most tantalizing of all. Some say they were built by an unknown, ancient civilization. Others claim they were part of the Peralta's extensive mining operations, a secret subway system for moving. Imagine that, a hidden underground world, right beneath the feet of all those who search on the surface. These tales add a whole new dimension, literally, to the hunt. The search isn't just across the landscape anymore. It's a descent into the earth itself. What's fascinating is how one tale spawns so many others. Each story is slightly different, tailored by the person telling it. A prospector who finds an oddly shaped rock might see it as a Jesuit marker. Another who finds a rusty pickaxe head might believe it belonged to the Peraltas. The same strange carving on a canyon wall could be interpreted as a map to the Dutchman mine, a clue to the soldier's gold, or a warning from ancient spirits. Each new story is a reflection of the person who tells it, rooted in the same fundamental yearning, the desire for discovery, for wealth, and for a connection to something bigger than ourselves. It's a beautiful, chaotic web of folklore. The core story of the Lost Dutchman acts as the sun, and these smaller legends are the planets orbiting it. They all draw from its gravitational pull, but each has its own unique atmosphere, its own terrain of possibility. The soldier's gold is a story of conflict and lost duty. The Jesuit caches are tales of faith and persecution. The ancient tunnels speak to a fascination with lost civilizations and the unknown depths of history. They all come from the same place, but they take you on different emotional journeys. This process reveals so much about human nature. We aren't content with just one mystery. We need a universe of them. We take a core idea and we build upon it. We embellish it. We make it our own. It's a collaborative storytelling project that has been going on for generations, with each new searcher adding their own chapter, their own verse. Someone might find an old Spanish coin and suddenly a new branch of the legend sprouts. Maybe it wasn't just the Peraltas here, but other Spanish expeditions, each with their own lost treasure. The desert itself becomes the ultimate storyteller in this saga. Its silence invites us to fill it with words. Its harshness makes the idea of a hidden paradise, a source of unimaginable wealth, all the more alluring. Every twisted cactus, every strangely shaped butte, every dark cave entrance becomes a potential character or a plot point in the ever-expanding narrative. The wind whistling through the canyons sounds like whispers of the past, carrying fragments of these stories. The heat shimmering on the horizon can look like the glint of distant gold. The land doesn't just hold the legends, it actively participates in creating them. The Superstition Mountains are more than just a location on a map. They are a library of dreams, a museum of hope. Each legend, from the grand saga of the Dutchman to the whispered rumors of a single lost gold bar, is an exhibit. They represent the countless hours, the sweat, the sacrifice, and the unwavering belief of thousands of people who have been drawn to this place. They came looking for gold, but what they created was something far more enduring, a tapestry of myths that is richer than any mineral. And that's the real magic, isn't it? The treasure isn't just a physical thing anymore. It's the story. It's the chase. It's the community of believers, skeptics, and historians all arguing and dreaming together. The lost soldiers, the fugitive priests, the ancient tunnel builders, and the stubborn old Dutchman himself, they are all characters in a grand play, and the Superstition Mountains are their stage. Every new tale adds another scene, another layer of intrigue, ensuring that the performance will never truly end. The search for one mine has become a search for a dozen different fortunes, all tangled up in a beautiful, confusing, and captivating mess. It proves that the human imagination is the most fertile ground there is. Plant one seed of a good story, and a whole forest of legends will grow. And as long as there are people willing to dream, that forest will continue to expand, its roots digging deeper into the heart of the desert and its branches reaching for the sky. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of legends within legends. It's a reminder that sometimes the story behind the story is the most fascinating part. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep listening to the stories the world has to tell. See you next time. Have you ever sat around a campfire, the flames dancing and casting long shadows, and listened to a story that felt so real, so tangible, you could almost reach out and touch it? That's where we find ourselves today, in a place where the solid ground of history meets the shifting sands of dreams. This is the world of Jacob Waltz and his lost Dutchman mine, a story that has long since escaped the confines of dusty books and official records. Imagine, for a moment, you're not sitting in front of a screen. Instead, you're out there, in the heart of the Superstition Mountains. The sun is setting, painting the jagged peaks in shades of orange and purple. The air grows cool, carrying the scent of dust and creosote. You pull your jacket a little tighter and lean in closer to the crackling fire. Someone begins to speak, their voice low and steady, and the story of the old Dutchman begins to unfold. This is how myths are born, not in grand libraries or sterile archives, but in shared moments just like this. The story of Jacob Waltz isn't just a collection of dates and facts. It's a living, breathing entity, shaped and reshaped by every person who has ever told it. It's a tapestry woven from threads of documented truth and whispered rumor, each strand giving it color and texture. The documented truth gives us a skeleton, a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz, who lived and prospected in Arizona during the late 19th century. We have census records, mining claims, newspaper articles that mention him. These are the solid bones of our story. We know he was a real person who walked these dusty trails, who felt the same scorching sun on his back. He was a man with hopes, with calluses on his hands. A man who, like so many others, came to this rugged land in search of a better life. But a skeleton is not a person. It's the whispered rumors, the campfire tales that give the story its flesh and blood, its heart and soul. These are the parts that make our eyes widen and our breath catch in our throats. Did he really rescue a man from the powerful Peralta family in Mexico? Was he given a map to their secret, gold-filled mine as a reward? Did he appear in Phoenix, his saddlebags heavy with impossibly rich gold, or only to vanish back into the mountains before anyone could follow him? These are the questions that don't have easy answers. They live in the space between what we know and what we believe. Each storyteller adds their own little flourish. Maybe in one version, Waltz is a cunning and secretive old prospector. In another, he's a tragic figure, haunted by the treasure he can't share. One tale might speak of a hidden clue on his deathbed, another of a curse that protects the mine from all who seek it. These stories, passed down from one generation to the next, are more than just entertainment. They are a form of oral history, a way of preserving the spirit of a time and place. They captured the raw, untamed essence of the old West-Italian of immense hardship, but also of boundless possibility. A time when a single person with enough grit and a little bit of luck could stumble upon a fortune that would change their life forever. The story of Waltz's mine became a legend because it taps into that universal human desire for adventure and discovery. It speaks to the part of us that wonders, what if? What if there really is a lost treasure out there, just waiting to be found? What if I could be the one to find it? It's the same impulse that drove explorers across oceans and pioneers across continents. As we journey deeper into this tale, try to feel the ground beneath your feet. Imagine walking those same dusty trails that Waltz once walked. Feel the rough texture of the rocks. See the way the light filters through the Palo Verde trees. Hear the scuttling of a lizard in the underbrush, the cry of a hawk circling high overhead. These mountains hold the story. They were the silent witnesses to whatever truths and secrets Jacob Waltz carried with him. The line between documented truth and whispered rumor isn't a clear, sharp one. It's more like a desert mirage, shimmering and shifting in the heat. What one person swears as a fact, another dismisses as folklore. A detail from an old newspaper might be twisted and embellished over 100 retellings until it becomes something else entirely. For example, we know Waltz had a partner, Jacob Weiser. Historical records confirm his existence. But what happened to him? The official story is sparse. The legend, however, is rich with dramatic detail. Some say he was ambushed and killed by Apaches guarding the sacred ground. Others whisper that Waltz himself, in a fit of greed, was the one who did him in, ensuring the secret of the mine would be his alone. The truth is likely lost to time, buried somewhere in these unforgiving mountains. And that's the magic of it, isn't it? The mystery is what keeps us coming back. If we had a perfectly clear, footnoted account of every event, the story would lose its power. It's the empty spaces, the unanswered questions, that allow our imaginations to take flight. We become co-creators of the legend, filling in the gaps with our own hopes, fears, and dreams. The transformation of Waltz's story into a living myth wasn't a conscious act. It happened organically, around campfires, in dusty saloons, and on the front porches of ranch houses. A prospector would share a tidbit he'd heard. A rancher would add a detail his grandfather told him. A historian would try to connect it to a known fact, and slowly, over decades, the legend grew. It took on a life of its own, becoming more than the story of one man. It became the story of the mountains themselves. These oral traditions are incredibly powerful. They connect us to the past in a way that a textbook never can. When you hear the story told, you're not just receiving information. You're participating in a ritual that's as old as humanity itself. You are part of a long chain of listeners and tellers, stretching all the way back to the very first person who looked at the Superstition Mountains and wondered what secrets they held. Think about the people who kept this story alive. They weren't famous authors or acclaimed historians. They were ordinary people. Miners, cowboys, storekeepers, and guides. They were people who knew the land, who understood its beauty and its dangers. They told a story not just to entertain, but to teach, to warn, and to preserve a piece of their heritage. They were passing on a torch, and in doing so, they ensured that the name Jacob Waltz would never be forgotten. So as we stand here, metaphorically, at the crossroads between history and dream, let's appreciate both. Let's honor the historical Jacob Waltz, the real man of flesh and blood who toiled under the Arizona sun. And let's also embrace the legendary Waltz, the mythical figure who guards his golden secret from beyond the grave. Both are essential parts of this incredible saga. The story of the lost Dutchman mine is a reminder that some things are unmeant to be neatly categorized. Some stories are meant to be lived, to be felt, to be passed on with a sense of wonder. It's a testament to the enduring power of a good story, and how, in the right time and place, it can become something much, much more. It becomes a legend. It becomes a dream that we can all share. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the journey. If you're enjoying this exploration into the heart of legend, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to bring these stories to light. We have so much more to uncover, so stick around. You won't want to miss what's next. Hello and welcome back. We've journeyed far together, across sun-scorched sands, and through the winding passages of history. We've chased whispers of gold, deciphered ancient maps, and stood at the very precipice of a legendary discovery. Now, we arrive at our final chapter. Chapter 19. What Lies Beneath. For weeks, we've been consumed by the promise of the lost Dutchman's mine, a treasure that has lured countless souls into the unforgiving embrace of the Superstition Mountains. We've spoken of Jacob Waltz, of clues left on stone, and of a fortune that could change lives. But as we stand here, metaphorically, at the end of this long and dusty trail, I find myself asking a different question. What if we've been looking for the wrong kind of treasure all along? Think about it. The story isn't just about gold bars stacked in a hidden cavern. It's about the chase. It's about the relentless human spirit that drives us to look beyond the horizon, to believe in something magical, something just out of reach. It's the thrill of the unknown, the spark of curiosity that refuses to be extinguished by skepticism or hardship. Could it be that this spark, this sense of wonder, is the real gold we've been searching for? The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine is more than just a get-rich-quick story. It's a modern myth, a tapestry woven from threads of hope, greed, mystery, and the profound, almost spiritual connection between humanity and the wild, untamed landscapes of our world. It speaks to a deep, primal yearning within us, the desire to believe that there are still secrets left to uncover, that the world hasn't been fully mapped and catalogued, that magic still exists if you know where to look. This is the emotional and philosophical heart of the legend. It's not just about the destination, but the journey. Every person who has ever searched for this mine, whether they found a single nugget or just a handful of dust, became part of the story. They contributed their own chapter of hope, of struggle, of adventure. They were driven by the same force that compels scientists to explore the deepest oceans and astronomers to gaze at the farthest stars. It's the pursuit of knowledge, the hunger for discovery, the sheer joy of the quest itself. The gold, if it even exists, is almost secondary. It's a symbol. It represents the ultimate prize, the tangible proof of an answered question. But the real value lies in the asking of the question. It's in the camaraderie of fellow searchers, the quiet moments of awe while watching a desert sunset, the humbling realization of our own smallness against the backdrop of geological time. These are experiences that enrich the soul in a way that gold never could. They are treasures of the heart, not of the wallet. Perhaps Jacob Waltz, in his final days, wasn't just leaving a trail to a physical location. Maybe he was leaving behind a legacy of wonder, a puzzle so intricate, so alluring, that it would captivate generations. He wasn't just bequeathing a fortune. He was bequeathing a grand adventure, a reason to dream, a challenge to our perception of what is possible. He gave us a story that would outlive him, outlive us all, and become as much a part of these mountains as the saguaro cacti in the ancient rock formations. And that brings us to the desert itself. The Superstition Mountains. They are the silent, stoic guardians of this legend. For all our searching, for all our technology and determination, the desert keeps her secrets, as all ancient places do. She has watched civilizations rise and fall. She has witnessed countless treasure hunts, both big and small. She has seen prospectors arrive full of hope and leave with nothing but the sun on their backs. There's a profound wisdom in this silence. The desert teaches us humility. It reminds us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some secrets are meant to be kept, to fuel our imagination, to keep that flame of wonder burning brightly. If the mine were found tomorrow, if its location were pinpointed on a map for all to see, the magic would vanish. The story would end. The adventure would be over. What lies beneath the rock and sand? Maybe it's a fabulous treasure. Maybe it's nothing at all. Or maybe, just maybe, what lies beneath is a mirror, a reflection of our own hopes, our own dreams, our own unyielding desire to believe in the extraordinary. The landscape holds not a treasure of gold, but a treasure of meaning. It challenges us to look inward, to discover what truly drives us. The real treasure isn't buried in the earth. It's unearthed within ourselves during the search. It's the resilience we find when faced with failure, the creativity we employ to solve a puzzle, the peace we feel in the vast, silent wilderness. It's the understanding that the journey, with all its twists and turns, is far more valuable than any pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so, as we close this chapter, we aren't left with an answer. We are left with something far better, a beautiful, enduring mystery. The desert keeps her secrets, and in doing so, she gives us a gift. She gives us a reason to keep looking, to keep wondering, and to keep dreaming. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine will continue, not because of the gold, but because of the unquenchable human spirit that is drawn, time and time again, to the magnificent, mysterious heart of the Superstition Mountains. The greatest treasure of all is the wonder that leads us there. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. It has been a privilege to explore this legend with you. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more adventures into the mysteries of our world. Until next time, keep searching, keep wondering, and never lose your sense of adventure. Soft, contemplative music with the gentle sounds of wind and distant cicadas. And welcome back as we arrive at the final chapter of our journey into the heart of the Superstition Mountains. We've traversed treacherous trails, sifted through dusty archives, and listened to the whispers of history carried on the desert wind. We've followed the phantom footsteps of the Dutchman, Jacob Waltz, chased the tantalizing glint of a lost mine, and explored the countless tales of triumph and tragedy that have been etched into this unforgiving landscape. And now, we find ourselves here, at the end of the trail, not with a map clutched in our hands, but with something far more profound. A deep and abiding respect for the mystery itself. This is Chapter 20, The Eternal Silence of the Superstitions. As we stand here in the fading light, the sun begins its slow descent, painting the rugged faces of the red rock cliffs in hues of gold, crimson, and deep purple. It's a spectacle that is played out countless times, witnessed by the Hohokam, the Apache, the Spanish prospectors, and the generations of treasure hunters who followed. Each group saw something different in these mountains. For some, it was a sacred home, a place of spiritual power. For others, it was a fortress, a bastion against an encroaching world. And for so many, it was a bank vault promising unimaginable wealth, guarded by curses and the ghosts of those who had tried and failed before. The air grows still, the heat of the day surrendering to a cool, gentle breeze that whispers through the saguaros and palo verde trees. It carries the rhythmic, timeless chorus of cicadas, a sound that feels as ancient as the rocks themselves. This is the sound of the desert settling in for the night. It's a sound of peace, of continuity, a stark contrast to the frantic, gold-fevered dreams that have so often disturbed its slumber. It's in this profound silence that the true nature of the superstitions reveals itself. It is a silence that has swallowed the shouts of discovery, the cries of desperation, and the final prayers of the lost. It is a silence that holds all the secrets, all the stories, all the unanswered questions. What have we really been searching for on this journey? Was it a physical mine, a specific vein of gold, or tucked away in some forgotten canyon? Or was it something else? Perhaps the true treasure was never the gold itself, but the allure of the quest. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine is more than just a story about wealth. It's a testament to the enduring power of human hope, curiosity, and the unyielding desire to believe in something just beyond the edge of our known world. It's a modern myth, born from the American frontier, that speaks to our collective fascination with the unknown. Think about the characters we've met along the way. Jacob Waltz, the enigmatic Dutchman, who took his secret to the grave, leaving behind a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Was he a master storyteller, a clever prospector who covered his tracks, or simply a man who found a small amount of gold and spun a grand tale around it? His legacy is not in the gold he may or may not have found, but in the enduring mystery he created. Then there are the countless others, the Peralta family, whose alleged slaughter gave the mountains their name. Adolph, Ruth, the determined amateur who met a tragic end, his death only adding fuel to the fire of the legend. And the hundreds of Dutch hunters who have dedicated their lives, and sometimes lost them, to this singular obsession. Each of them was chasing a dream. For some, it was a dream of riches that would change their lives. For others, it was the thrill of solving a puzzle that had stumped so many before them. And for a few, perhaps, it was a way to connect with a wilder, more primal version of themselves, to test their mettle against the raw power of nature. The mountain doesn't judge their motivations. It simply is. It stands as a silent witness, its canyons echoing with the half-remembered stories and the faded dreams of all who have walked its paths. The legend becomes a part of the landscape, as tangible as the rocks and as elusive as the heat haze shimmering on the horizon. As the last sliver of the sun disappears, the sky transforms into a deep, velvety indigo, studded with the first brilliant stars. The silence deepens, punctuated only by the soft sigh of the wind. In this moment, the boundary between fact and fiction, between history and legend, begins to blur. The story of the Dutchman gold feels less like a historical account and more like a dream, a collective memory that the desert itself seems to hold. It's a story that you can almost feel in the air, a presence that lingers in the shadows of the canyons. You start to understand why people become so captivated out here, under this vast, open sky. Anything feels possible. The rational mind gives way to a sense of wonder. And you can almost believe that just over the next ridge, a lost treasure awaits. This is the enduring magic of the Superstition Mountains. They are a canvas upon which we project our own desires, fears, and hopes. The gold is the catalyst, but the real story is about the human spirit. It's about our relationship with the wilderness, our fascination with the past, and our unending search for meaning and purpose. The mountains don't offer easy answers. Instead, they offer a challenge to look beyond the surface, to listen to the silence, and to find value not in what you can take from the land, but in what the land can teach you about yourself. It teaches resilience, patience, and humility. It reminds us that there are forces in this world far older and more powerful than our fleeting ambitions. So, where does that leave us? Has our journey been a fool's errand, a chase after a ghost? Not at all. We may not have found a map marked with an X, but we have uncovered a rich tapestry of human history, folklore, and natural wonder. We've learned that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be contemplated. Their value lies not in the solution, but in the questions they inspire us to ask. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine will likely endure for as long as these mountains stand, passed down from one generation to the next, evolving and changing with each telling. New clues will be discovered, new theories will be proposed, and new adventurers will feel the pull of the superstitions, drawn by the same siren song that has called the so many before them. The legend continues, living on in the quiet corners of desert towns, in the hushed conversations of old-timers, and in the hearts of dreamers everywhere. It exists now as half dream, half memory, a myth woven into the very fabric of the American Southwest. And as we conclude our exploration, we are left with this final, tantalizing thought, a whisper carried on the night wind through the silent canyons. Somewhere out there, under the watchful gaze of Weaver's Needle and the shadow of Blacktop Mesa, the Dutchman's gold may still wait, or perhaps it never existed at all. The answer, it seems, lies not in a hidden canyon, but in what you choose to believe. The mountain keeps its silence, and the secret remains safe. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. It has been a privilege to share these stories with you. If you've enjoyed this exploration into the heart of one of America's greatest legends, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into history and mystery. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening to the stories the world has to tell.